Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. It is 5:35 by my clock, because that one back there doesn't work evidently.
It's back.
So it's runs twice a day.
We'll go ahead and receive conflict of interest statements from anybody on the board or staff of the POA with respect to anything that's on your board agenda. Does anyone have any conflict of interest? No. Okay. To the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's start. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll move on with member comments and start with Brian Housecutt.
Good evening, members of the board. Two items for tonight. On the 25th, my house was potentially going to be broken into. My car was going to be broken into. There was an individual that came across my yard and tried the door handle of my car. Unfortunately, it was locked, but I've heard from other folks here that this same individual, or an individual a whole lot like him, has been going through the neighborhood and community and potentially trying to break into vehicles and successful in some cases. I had a videotape of it. I called the police and they came by to see the videotape. They essentially told me they weren't going to do anything because they didn't consider walking across my house or my front yard to be a crime. Since then, I called to have one of the lieutenants from the police department contact me. I've not received any contact from them, but I did talk to Greg Smith. Greg is our representative from the city council. Greg took my videotape as well as some other members' videotapes. I was speaking to the chief of police for Corpus Christi. I encourage Brent, I would request that you and the board and the staff contact the homeowners and make sure that they're aware that, again, locking their doors is critical, but also if they have an incident, even if it's a not successful incident, that they make a report to the police department. I know a lot of people are buying security cameras this time of year. Make sure that you have security footage, that you send that to the police department or send it particularly to Greg. Greg told me, he says, multiple names, multiple people gives a greater case for the police to come out and investigate these things. Because this guy's been roaming through the community for unmolested. You walk in front of my garage, which is very brightly lit, and just walk by like you own the place. It's at 3 o'clock in the morning. So this stuff seems to happen between 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning. So I encourage everyone to be very careful about that. Second item, real quickly, is I see on the agenda that there's a bylaw amendment. I urge you folks to table that issue and not take any further bylaw amendments. In my opinion, the board does not have the ability, does not have the legal authority to make bylaw amendments. And that is, you individually vote for a bylaw amendment. I don't believe that you're carrying forward your fiduciary responsibility to the homeowners. That's all. Thank you very much.
Linda Marshall.
I didn't know anything.
Okay.
Just say that.
Jim McFadden.
Good evening. Jim McFadden, 15606 3 Fountains Bank Drive. Arise tonight to bring a critical issue to the attention of the community. For many months, the community has been engaged in the debate over the bylaws of the corporation. You read the Moon articles, you watched the debate on next door and island issues, you've heard members speak at board meetings like tonight. We're determined to resolve this dispute with the most democratic of processes. We believe that 5,300 owners should have the ultimate voice in the rules that govern our properties. We believe that the whim of 4 board members should not change the rules that might affect the investment value of our properties. We believe that amending the bylaws is a right that should be reserved exclusively for the homeowners. We believe that the board should be prohibited from throwing our elected members off the board unless the board members committed a crime per state law. The Arch has been organized to collect ballots to call a special members meeting to allow all 5,300 members to vote to restore these rights. We're organized, funded, and supported by your friends and neighbors. We urge everyone in this room tonight, watching on Facebook, and the more than 1,000 of you that will see this video in the coming days, to go to Padre Island Arch, arch.com, to learn more about the process. Voting has begun. Proxies have begun to arrive. For those of you who have already submitted ballots and who have offered to enthusiastically support this initiative, we thank you. You confirm for us that this is good for the community. For those sitting board members and those candidates who wish to represent us, we urge you to take a public position on the Arch and these important initiatives. For those just learning tonight about the Arch, the time is now for all owners to voice their opinion on these important issues. We put the question to the community. This is the most democratic of all processes. We want to hear from all 5,300 owners. Tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m., we're hosting a Q&A session at Schlitterbahn. Hope to see everybody there. Hope we need extra room. If you can't make it, you're welcome to watch on Facebook, and you can submit questions, and we'll respond to electronic questions as well. Once again, Padre Island Arch, arch.com is where you go, or you can click on the logo on Nextdoor, or you can click on the logo from Island Issues. Thank you for your time tonight.
No, Jim spoke for me very well.
Thanks. Joe Minervini. Good evening, esteemed board members. My name is Joe Minervini. I reside at 1501 Aquaria Street. According to one of our residents who studied the topic of hiring private security companies, a private security company would cost approximately $70 per dwelling unit per year. We have approximately 5,000 dwelling units in our HOA. That means approximately $350,000 per year will be taken out of our HOA bank account. That means, and I've not checked these figures myself, supposedly according to this one person who is an expert, at least she thought so. That's what it costs. That means in 3 years our HOA fund would be about $1 million poor. All because some of our residents do not lock their cars. And this is not my opinion. In St. Charles, Illinois, the police department reports between January and March of the year 2015, the means of entry in every single burglary from a motor vehicle during the first quarter was through unlocked doors. In Sarasota County, I believe that's in Florida, between 2014 and 2015, 75% of reported vehicle burglaries were to unlocked vehicles. Frisco, Texas, police there say 75% of motor vehicle burglaries reported in May 2016 involve unlocked doors. El Paso PD, which is not a very safe city, I know that. Police officials have estimated that many as 75% of all vehicle burglaries are due to people leaving doors unlocked. Jacksonville, Florida Police Department says of the more than 1,600 car burglaries in the city for year 2016, around 70% happened when people left their doors unlocked, their car doors unlocked. This trend of vehicle burglaries and unlocked car doors more than likely is the same throughout this country. I hope this board decides to scrap the plan for hiring any outside security companies and spend in 3 years about $1 million on some better projects. Thank you.
Tom Cable.
I'd like to briefly introduce a incomplete project. I normally wouldn't do that, but since this is the last board meeting for about 2 months, I thought if the board were familiar with it, at least held it in their hands, they would have an idea of it, and then I would work on completing it during the next 2 months, and also a petition option to add some things to it. Basically what it is, it's a survey of different aspects of the island. I simply drive around in my car, and I just have these little maps that you print off Google, and I take color-coded markers to mark whatever the various items are that I'm looking at, and then I simply transfer them to this board. do one of these boards costs about $50 worth of materials and things, and this one's about half done. Basically, the pink pins represent houses that would be severe or significant under the committee's compliance committee's guidelines. There's about 500 of those. The blue represents boat trailers in unusual positions. The yellow represents RVs that are 2 axles or more. And the green and black represent utility trailers, which I find is quite an interesting development on the island. But you can also do surveys for other things. I mean, for example, if the board wanted a survey for common areas or fencing or any other survey, these are useful or easy to do and they measure progress. So I'll complete this and then I'll do this again in 6 months. And in 6 months, we can see the progress or lack thereof that we're making toward our compliance effort just based on the number of pins. The other thing that's interesting about this is it shows distribution. So that's very useful for strategic purposes, like this area really needs help, this area is doing well, this area is not. You know, so this will help us to do that. And then in 6 months, if we see improvement, great. If we don't, well, we know we need to do something different. So I will have this complete in about a week for this particular one. Basically, it's probably going to have about 100 hours into it. And then I'll also be providing some papers to the board that will just give you the statistics and also, you know, some ideas about things that I'm seeing when I do these surveys. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
A lot of work, huh? Wow. Thank you, Chris.
Call the witness time.
Thank you for the chance to speak. Once again, I want to say that I don't think it's fair to have us make comments before we hear what you have to say about the things that are on the agenda. But I don't need an answer because I know you don't care about that. You're not going to change it, but I don't think it's fair. I rise to speak about the 2 proposed amendments that Jim McFadden mentioned. For over 6 months, I have been having discussions with the president of this board, the attorney for this board, and various members of this board, begging you to put these 2 amendments on the agenda for the annual meeting. I didn't ask you to approve them. I didn't ask you to agree with them. I asked you to do one thing, put them on the ballot so that we, homeowners, can do an up or down vote, a Democratic up or down vote. And what's it take to put it on the annual ballot? I mean the agenda? 2 of you to say yes, and not 2 of you will stand up and put these 2 proposals on the agenda. And I say it's a sad thing. It's a sad thing when any government body or any board is afraid of its own constituents, fears its own citizens, is afraid to allow its citizens to have a fair, up and down, democratic vote that is un-American. Why do you pledge allegiance to that flag if you don't believe in democracy? And so I urge you tonight, once again, as I have many times, agree to put these 2 proposals on the ballot, on the agenda for the annual meeting. The Archit has assumed that you're going to continue in your refusal, and so we are simply a vehicle to create a special members meeting to put these 2 proposals on the agenda, and we're going to see it through, and we expect that we will vote them in eventually. But I ask you this: you serve to serve us. So why make us go through all this effort, hundreds of hours that I've spent and that Fadden has spent, other people have spent hundreds of hours.
And lots of our money spent.
And lots of our money. I'm in it $3,000 or $4,000. But that's fine.
And you've cost us about $36,000, right? This year so far?
Okay. There's no question to answer about. But my point is You're afraid of us. You're afraid of the democratic process. And you know what? I see the smirk on your face, sir, because it's a joke to you. But guess what? Guess what?
Carl, you're,
I'll quit that. Back in the day when this country was formed. Oh, I'm sorry.
Carl, you're over 3 minutes, but can you wrap it up?
All right, yes, I can. Thank you very much. I'm ashamed that you acting this way. It's not American, it's not democratic.
Did I miss anyone else on the list? All right, we'll move on. Any board comments to respond to the presentations or the member comments? And please keep.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm a wife of a veteran, and I resent being told that I am anti-American, anti-democracy. I sit on this board as a volunteer. I don't sit on this board to be ridiculed. Thank you.
Wow.
Anybody else? Any other response?
I just think there's a disagreement in the concept. In the law is that if the bylaws are silent, John has talked about this. Well, it's okay to have a disagreement, but to stand up here and call us all criminals or whatever, it's not fair. It's a legal disagreement.
Put it up for a vote then.
Then we don't talk an election.
The laws
We
cover
win an
it.
election. We have a representative government sitting right there, and you're saying it's un-American.
And what's with the elimination of a board member by a unanimous balance of the board? It's in Robert's rules, and we say we operate by Robert's rules.
The default position of the state statute is the opposite.
Talk about being
These
afraid.
ask me questions.
Yes, and that's what I'm going to ask them not to do.
But the state statute is the exact opposite.
All right,
from the default.
March talks about being afraid.
We're not going to do this tonight.
Yes, sir.
We're not going to do it again like it happened several months ago. I'm going to, and I'll set the rules here. If there are outbreaks, and I'm going to address that, Carl, the board is not going to interact with you guys, and we're not going to have the circus atmosphere like we did several months ago. I'm warning anybody that starts the stuff again. I'm warning you right now that we're going to be asking you to remove yourself from this building. I'll ask you one more time if it happens, and then I'm going to ask the police officer to escort you out. We're not going to have and I'm going to address that. The board members are not going to ask you in debate. We've had email exchanges. We'll have gentlemen exchanges with information, which we've done with many members. We're not going to stay up here and call each other names and get all excited. So, all right, we're going to move on. Any other board comments? Anyone? All right. Let's move on to the presentations, and we'll start with the ISAC report. We were mailed that by Stan Hulse. And Carter, were you going to go over that, or? There was only one item on the ISAC that really.
And you know, I'm not. This has been kind of a surprise to me to do this, but I was warned last month, and honestly, I didn't print the damn thing out, and it's in the internet, and I can't get a single hello. Anyway, ISAC is currently focused on the TERS system that's to repair the seawall on Packery Channel, and you know, I'm bitching about the lines on the wire across Packery Channel and stuff. I'll have a much better report. I'll keep up with this from now on. Sorry, ISAC is a whole different animal.
So, in Stan's report, the only thing that really involved What's that?
Did you have it there?
Well, he emailed it, and the only thing that really pertained to the POA was the park, the dog park. Around Aquarius. So there was a discussion about that, and what I read from his email, that the majority of folks were against the dog park over at Aquarius.
Majority? There were some great presentations. I guess that's, but it wasn't like 90-10. It was more like, 60-40. You were there. Do you remember the percentage?
Yeah, I couldn't give you a percentage on what it was, but it seemed like there were more speakers anti-dog park than pro-dog park.
That's true.
And that's
But it's
as good
not
a statement as you can make.
It's not an ISAC issue anyway, and so we didn't deal with it much.
And it sounded like that there were, the majority of the folks that showed up at the meeting were the homeowners that surrounded the Aquarius Park, and they were generally against the park.
And organized about it, yeah.
Carter, nothing was brought up about canals and waterways, to your recollection.
No, not to my
Not
report.
in this report. It's a written report.
Thank you.
Oh, except for the sheriff's vote. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Carter.
You want me to check?
William Goldston will report on Village Park Contract Award, Primavera Bulkhead Construction Project, and sonar debris removal RFQ and possible bid. So you guys have been doing a lot of work over the last couple of months, and we're excited to see you here.
And appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, Craig Thompson with Hanson has handed out a two-page summary for you to take a look at. Alan Byers here with us.
William was here. Was your mom coming?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
The green light's on.
You're good.
We were very pleased when the bids came in, and because the bids came in considerably lower than we thought that they would. The first sheet that you have there simply has the bids as they came in, the two contractors and the engineers estimate. The second page really tells a much better story. What we have there is we have the bid items, and then we have a column that has the contractor's bid prices and what we're recommending and requesting that you approve for us to award. The cost of the sodding was so attractive that we now can sod the entire park. Of course, the driving force behind this project has been trying to eliminate the stickers. And we were afraid we didn't have the money to be able to sod the entire park. Well, we do. And that's, when you look down there and you see site work, I left my glasses at home, but it says sodding, and you can see its red numbers over there. We're adding, and the contractor is agreeable to adding additional sodding at the same unit price. As a result of being able to do that, and the way the bids came in, we will include the sodding of the playing field, which was always important. We're going to add a few sidewalks between the curb and the existing sidewalk. I think there's three.
I think there's three spots.
We're going to do the beach volleyball park. We're going to add trees, still live oak trees.
Still live oak trees.
Some discussion about that, but we're going to add trees. And we're going to eliminate that tall grass that was going to be over there. So where we are on this, if you look down at the bottom on the right, we've got a total estimated contract amount of $450,000, leaving us a $50,000 contingency, which is basically a 10% contingency. We think that's an appropriate number to have as a contingency. I will tell you that if we can complete this project without dipping into the contingency, we've got an idea that we may want to add to this when the project's nearing completion. Need one more just feature out there.
There's one other item, the benches.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. I forgot about that. The city is adamant about wanting to have benches over in that Memorial Park area.
A couple in the Memorial Park, and then replacing the ones that were around the walkway as well.
And what we did there is the bids were already out. It didn't make sense to go do an addendum to the bid documents. So we have just reserved $1,000 a bench, or 7 benches. That's not included in the contract amount, and we'll do that individually when the contract is completed.
So now we're down to 43,000
Actually, the
$50,000.
amount available you actually have is about $508,000 for construction. So you actually do, yeah, right. So there is 50,000 still left in contingency.
Okay, that's neat.
So what we would, assuming you agree with all this, what we'd like to have is y'all's authorization for us to enter into final contract negotiations and bring you a contract this week or next week. And you all have some vehicle to be able to get the contract executed so we can get the contractor to start. We're thinking he's going to start work right after the first of the year. Because it's sodding, it's going to take a little bit longer, perhaps, in the construction period. So we're going to be also talking to him about what his schedule will be.
William, has any talked to you? You said $1,000 a bench, and you said 7 benches.
Yes.
There are lots of parks. People are willing to dedicate a bench to a loved one, esteemed personality, etc., myself excluded. Have you given any thought to advertising on Facebook or whatever, or Becky can, to see if there's any interest out there? Maybe a couple people want to go together and we can save some money on some benches.
Sure, that'd be super.
All it is a little gold plaque and, that kind of thing.
I'm not on Facebook, but...
No, neither am I. I haven't got time for it. I'm too busy with life. But anyway, thank you.
Great.
Becky, can you look into that for us? Thanks.
Have we done business with this firm before, Hanson?
Has Hanson done that? Yes. Yes. And they are a landscape firm that had a nursery. They're a Fox landscape and nursery. They had a nursery for a while. They got out of that business, and then just recently, within the last year or two, they've gotten back in that business. I made a point to call some of the references. They had several references of recent work, and I made a point to call a few of those, and they're in good standing with those and the references checked out. So it seems like they're back in full force moving forward with landscape business.
Were any of those contracts that you checked on in the same kind of numbers as we're talking about, or were they bigger or smaller jobs?
Most of them were smaller. Of course, this is a large landscape project, no doubt. One of them was not as big as this, but it was a relatively large work. They're doing the landscape work over at the Padre Valley Park for the contractor that's working for the county up there.
Okay, I got you. Glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'm good.
So Craig, I got a couple of questions here. On the recommended award.
Right.
We have base bid total of $367,286, or $287, plus 83. Can you walk me through?
Sure. Yeah.
Talk about that.
And that's a good question. So if you looked at the base bid amount, so on this recommendation award, you have a couple columns here. You have one that has Fox Tree and Landscape, and you have the unit price and then the total for those units, right? And so their base bid that they turned in, that I read aloud last Wednesday in Becky's office, was $211,914. That was their base bid. What I've done, though, for ease here, is to put the sodding and some haul off in there underneath that hydraulic seating. Even though that wasn't in their base bid, I went ahead and put it underneath there because what we're doing, what I wanted to show you, is replacing all where we were going to do hydro seeding out there. We're doing all sodding over that area right now. So it's just kind of easier, Brent, to show it there. So that's an additional. So that increased that base bid to $367,000. And the additive alternates underneath that, you'll notice we're not awarding the Gulf Muley, so that reduced it a little bit. And then a couple of the other places where I had sod on the additive alternates, that's all included up in the sodding up at the top. That's why I thought that would be easier to show it that way, so that's what that was.
That's the baseball deal.
the baseball field, and the baseball field is in the base bid, so I left it there. That's number 7 and 8. That's the baseball field. But the playing field, which was like just a general athletic field, soccer field or football field, that's 16 and 17. I removed the sod out of that and put it up in 6A. And the same with some additional sod areas around the playground area that we had. I moved it up into 6A. So those additive alternates got put back into that 6A. I just thought it was easier to show that sod underneath where that seating was, so that you know we're getting rid of all the seating and it's 100% sod out there now. And these prices were phenomenal. I'm embarrassed to put my engineer's estimate next to the bids that we got back, but you know, quite honestly, our numbers when we did our estimates were based on the old bids that we had out here. And you had landscape companies bidding on it instead of general contractors, and I think you got some really nice bids this time. So I take advantage of it and put sod out there.
And you got all the additive bid items on the project?
All of them except, again, that Gulf Muley, and I think if we're just going to go ahead and put sod out there where that Gulf Muley seed was going to go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I think with the contingency, there's a couple of things that we could add to this project to utilize the funds. One of them I'd like to talk about is kind of recognizing the ladies that have done this yeoman's work on the playground equipment. If we can manage this and get the construction done, then maybe help out that playground equipment. And then also I think there's some shade structures that have been discussed. So kudos on a real well done job.
Thank you.
What's SWPP number 2?
SW3P, it's Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. It is when you disturb soil more than an acre, TCEQ has a general permit out there that makes you put the silt fencing around it. You've got to have the construction entrance to and from and protect the inlets. It's basically to make sure we don't allow erosion to run off the site into the stormwater system.
And it costs 15 G.
Well, those are the improvements, and also the contractor is required to keep up with the plan and to keep up with the monitoring and all of those things during the construction process. So that's what, all that I lumped into one bid item, coming up with the plan and making sure all the infrastructure is there to protect it. So that's
on these ladies about the kids part, did not we designate a space and do some?
Absolutely. So if you look at your bid item, the number 14 and 15 of the base bid are playground improvements. We are excavating all of the wood mulch in there and grading all of that to where we get it to where it's a foot below the existing level out there, and we're bringing in a foot of new mulch out there for them. Where they're going to put the playground, we've already talked with the ladies out there, where we're going to put the playground, we're going to stockpile that portion of the mulch on the side, let them come build that, and then bring that mulch back in. When we talked with, I forget her name, the lady with the playground, she also had a playground consultant there that will be there to help build it, and that's what he suggested, to stockpile that mulch and bring it after, you know, all the concrete's gone on the ground. And
would you happen to know what percentage of funding she has today? Do you know?
I heard about 30,000.
She's
75.
very quickly.
36,000. Yeah. Okay.
Have we looked at a,
36 is what they're saying. But
could we look at a pour and play?
At a what?
A pour and play?
Pour and play?
Instead of pour and play, it is the push.
Instead
Instead of the mulch.
What's the cost of that?
It was much more expensive. I can certainly get you an estimated price on it. We can look into that. But I think one of the reasons why we stuck with the mulch, we were looking, or not we, the folks that did the playground, she had looked at the different kind of mulch, the rubber mulch. I think it was already 3 or 4 times as expensive as the wood mulch. And so that's why we went with it. Your wood mulch is 18,000. I think the rubber mulch was, I think her numbers were in the 30 to 40,000 range for just the rubber mulch. The clay, the pour and play, we can check the numbers for you.
Because once that's done, it's done. The mulch, you're going to have to redo it. Whatever.
Is the 18,000 just for the mulch for the play area?
That's right. Yeah. No, for the entire playground, not just underneath.
What do you figure the percentage for the playground is? Just for grants.
For the new playground in that whole area? 30%, 40% probably?
So what we can do, again, very exciting that you guys have finished on time, finished on budget, and we're moving towards Village Park. This has been a long time coming. I would make the recommendation to the board that we give the authorization to get the contracts in place. We have a policy here that the board will review those contracts prior to the contractor signing. I would hope that all of us can do our job and turn that around fairly quickly. And then we get underway, and if we want to make some modifications or changes, we have to negotiate a change order.
Yep.
But I wouldn't let this feature hold us back from moving forward. We need the part done.
Absolutely. You need a motion.
I think Marvin was going to say something.
Oh,
That was.
whoops. What did you say, Martin?
Go ahead, Marvin.
That's Martin.
Dang, I missed it. What was it?
I believe we have $200,000 of POA money and $400,000 of city money. Is that correct? For a total of 6. Are we going to be able to get this entire project done for 6?
Yes, and John Bell's agreement with the city, that those are sort of the numbers that we take out. We started with, and we have Hanson's fee and what you're paying me coming out of that, and the rest is for the construction.
So what is your answer? Can we do it for 6?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? And then we'll take a motion.
Well, I have a question. Are we sure that the irrigation system will keep all these improvements from dying? I look, every time I go down Park Road 22, I look at the 5 palm trees that are nothing. So I want to make sure we have adequate watering for.
We pay big money to have that designed by engineers that do that for a living. Yeah. Big money.
Okay.
And the city made it.
I will reiterate, it doesn't stop with them building this. The maintenance program that the PIPOA and the city are going to need to make sure. Watering's just part of it. There's a lot of other things that we need to make sure happen on a yearly basis, other than just watering to keep those sticker birds out. It's a natural, it's a species that it'll come back if we allow it to come back. We're going to have to make sure that there's treatment going on. That's one of the things we've already talked with this contractor, is when he's done, to make sure that they give us a maintenance program going forward that you guys can look at and hopefully follow.
Yes, we are going to have maintenance, grass cutting. We are going to have fertilizer.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Maybe we should consider them helping us maintain it for 3 months or something like that to train us how to do it. Could you get that in there somehow? Just to talk about it.
Probably some of your specs are.
They already maintain it up to a certain point in establishment, and some of that they've got to do, I think, is it 1 or 2 mowings? I think it might be 2 mowings and irrigating. So there is some of that into it. It's not 6 months long, but it's probably a couple months worth of
Just a thought.
Yes.
All right, again, bad job.
Go ahead, girlfriend.
Are there any motions?
I make a motion that we go ahead with the proposed bid with this contractor.
I'll second it.
All right, is there any discussion? All right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, the motion passes unanimous.
Village Park.
I will remind
Thanks for the grass.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That's gonna make a huge difference if we maintain it.
We gotta maintain it.
So John, you're going to work with William, the contract.
The contract, and as per policy, we'll email everybody on board to take a look at it before you sign it.
All right, bring it here at Bulkhead.
Well, Lou Schrader is here. I'll let him talk about what's going on, because obviously the contract has been shut down for a couple of days over there.
Good evening. Okay, so with the Thanksgiving holidays, things have been moving a little bit slow out there. But last week, before they broke for the holiday, they did start running into some problems with the front bulkhead sheet piles. They had put them in almost all the way across from corner to corner, but they hadn't driven them to grade because they were trying to get them all aligned, make sure they're all interlocked. And so once they had them all set, then they were going through the process of tightening up the joints and making sure that they were all fitting. And so as they were driving them, they have run into some obstructions down below grade that they're having trouble getting through. As a consequence, they have now pulled out approximately half of the front panels, trying to figure out what's going on. They have come up with some new tools, if you want to call them that they've got a vibratory hammer they're bringing out and some other things where they think that they can break up, and with a combination of jetting and vibrating, I think they can break up that debris and pull it to the surface and get it out of the way. But it's kind of slowed them down a little bit, so they're in the process of working through that and finding out what's really going to work for them so they can get back on track. So that's what's going on with the bulkhead right now. It's kind of looking a little bit slow, but they've run into a problem and they're working through it. Another related thing is there's been some discussion about protecting the adjacent property owner's driveway. They did say that they have talked with a bunch of their experienced guys back in the office. They think they can drive some sheet steel to protect that driveway. They have material that they've located that about a half-inch thick steel. They think that they can work with that. And so they think that that's going to move forward. But right now, that's kind of their back burner problem. They need to get the front bulkhead straightened out, and then once they get that straightened up, they'll get back to working adjacent to the property. So they think they've got that solved. It's just not quite there to try it out yet. So.
Can you elaborate what kind of obstructions we put on the sandbar?
Well, when they were driving one of the sheet piles right where the old drain line used to be, they did something and they jetted and pulled up some stuff that looked like, I don't know if you know what flowable fill is, but it's a cement sand mixture that a lot of times people will pour around. Like if they had problems with that culvert previously, they were trying to seal it up, and may have just dumped some cement sand mixture in there to try to contain the erosion and whatnot. So they think some of that was down below. They're not real sure, they can't really tell right now if they pull some of it up exactly what the problem is. There's some speculation that maybe where those old sheet piles have failed, talk with everybody, they should not have kicked back towards the roadway, but they're thinking maybe they did a little bit. So they're just trying to work through it right now. They really don't have a good answer as to what the stuff is. It's just something that's really hard, and it's actually causing a few cracks on the leading edge of those sheet piles where they're hitting it. So it's something substantial. It's not something small that's easily pushed out of the way.
Is this something that might cost us more money?
My guess would be probably, but they haven't said anything about what that is.
I would encourage you to talk to them about means and methods.
Yes,
first.
Responsibility. Which is basically, the scope of the project hasn't really changed. The geometry of the project hasn't changed. They've just run into an unforeseen condition, but I suspect that they will come to us at some point and at least ask.
And we're gonna be able to move that sheet pile metal on that driveway issue in due time, and it's going to be a reasonable amount of money.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Okay. And you'll come to us for that, and we'll email it around or whatever and get it done quick.
Yeah. Whenever they get to that point, I'm sure we'll have some discussions.
Because it's not a huge thing.
No.
No.
I guess that the other.
The city was there.
Yeah. That was the other thing I was going to say. The city finally showed up, and they pulled out that last section of storm drain line between the curb box and where the electrical line was. I looked in the hole when I got in this afternoon, and it looked like AEP may have repaired their line. I couldn't tell for sure. There were several lines that were exposed. So they did get the pipe out. They have not placed it yet. They're going to wait until CCC group casts the actual outlet structure, and then that way they'll lay it in and grade and make sure everything works. But
they're not holding us up, the city.
No, the city's not. City's gone in there and done what they can do until CCC group says that they're ready for them to come back and lay that piece of pipe. So,
all right, thank you.
Some stuff is going to pay some stuff not.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the sonar debris removal, RFQ.
Last month, I gave you all a copy of the draft RFQ. John Bell and I have talked about a contract that would go with this, and the draft RFQ needs some more work, but I just need direction from the board to go ahead and finish this and get it out to bidders to try to get some quotes in, and this will probably be a request for proposals. We'll ask the contractors to tell us how they think they should do the work.
I would hope that we could move forward with this and award a contract at the December meeting.
I'd make a motion to do that.
All right. Were there any specific questions you had that you wanted them to?
I just need to go.
I make a motion, we approve the draft and go for bidding.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion?
It'll be a request for proposal,
right,
because our objective is to get them to give us an all-in hourly rate, but there might be some variables that they see, like if they need a scuba diver or if they need hazmat.
And that's all
could be
spoken
extras,
to in here.
because we don't want to pay for that 100% of the time. It probably makes sense to only pay for that as extras as needed. But that's why it needs to be a little bit open for what they propose.
All right. Any other discussion? Call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Carries unanimous. Okay. We have a presentation from Hanson regarding the status of Bulkhead inspection phase 2. Is that just a carryover?
Hanson presented their report at the meeting last month.
Yeah.
They have provided you a proposal to go into phase 2. What the board needs to do is address whether or not they want to proceed with phase 2 or do something different so that we can move forward. And I didn't bring a copy of that. I'm not sure if we got put in your packet or not.
It's not in here this month.
No.
I would say, unless the board thinks otherwise, that we should get back with you on that, because I'm looking at folks that, do you guys want to move forward on it, or do you want to take a couple weeks to review it and come back to William? All right, so let's reroute it. Let's reroute it.
Right. Happy to do that.
And then we'll have some email discussion if we have to call a vote to move it forward, or we can put it on next month's agenda. PIPOA disaster recovery implementation strategies.
Captain Tom Rodino is here.
Tom. Thanks again, Craig. Good job, you guys.
Phase 2.
Give these to you. There's an original on top. You've got a flash drive as well, and a copy for each board member. Okay, y'all will require that, remember we started this project back in April when you authorized phase 1 late May, and then address some of the eligibility issues, the basis for doing the rest of the reports and investigations, and particularly looking at eligibility and using the FEMA guidelines to come up with a plan for you all to prepare for a hurricane. We had one in 47 years, and it seemed like a safe bet to get that started in May. We started phase 2 in the middle of July, and 2 main elements there. One was to assemble in place all of the information that you would need to have a complete picture of disaster preparedness and recovery process, and again, including the FEMA eligibility issues. And the other was describe what to expect from a major coastal storm. The reason we're using the FEMA eligibility issues, even though the PIPOA is not an eligible entity, is that somewhere down the road you may opt to turn over ownership of the bulkheads to the Waterway House Management District, which is a public entity, would be eligible under the FEMA guidelines for some post-disaster assessments. The other reason for using that is there aren't any other guidelines out there that really make any sense. If you look at how you're going to plan for these events and you consider that you may someday have the bulkheads or maybe even other property under the ownership of the management district, then it makes sense to use FEMA guidelines and set you up for that. Before Harvey was 47 years and a few people had the experience. Unfortunately, we all have some experience now. And I think one thing that we need to make people very much aware of is that you can't expect that it's going to be 47 years for the next one. Okay. 2005 hurricanes Katrina and Rita were a few months apart, and the rest of the alphabet was in the middle there. It was a very busy year. They ran out of names for storms, and we actually had 4 of them in the Gulf of Mexico Category 5. Those 2 and 2 others. And luckily, Katrina and Rita had winds down around Category 2 force, but they had storm surge from that big storm later on in the Gulf. So what I've done there is look at the earlier drafts that some of you may have seen and updated those to include the experience we had with Hurricane Harvey. And also that includes discussion of what might have happened here had Hurricane Harvey made landfall just south of Corpus Christi instead of just north of Corpus Christi. That put, when it made landfall in Rockport, that put everything on that side, on the worst side of the storm. That could have happened here. One of the things they did in the report there is I used the Keel Lake Road waterfront development up in Rockport as a comparison. Got a lot of similarities to Waterway House. And probably the most significant one is that construction and development of these 2 communities began in the mid-60s. They have a lot of houses built in the 60s and 70s that were built to different code standards that are in force today. One of the things up in Keel Lake, I was there about 3 weeks ago. At that point, they had 667 single-family homes. 10% of them had either been destroyed or were already scheduled for demolition. That number was going to climb somewhere between 15 and 20%. That was mainly from wind and wave action because the storm surge up there was only 2 feet. Actually less than what you got down here. But all of the older houses were along the bayfront. They got the full force of the wind, and they got the storm surge plus about 4 to 5 foot waves on top of the surge. And so that whole area up there just sustained an enormous amount of damage. You have the main report and 3 appendices, and there's a little bit of duplication in the appendices, and the reason for that is so that you can use them independently. You don't have to keep going back to the report, so the key pieces are in the appendices. The basic report gives the detailed background information on the project areas, storm history, regulatory issues, FEMA eligibility, and some discussions of how that eligibility would be affected by management district ownership of the resources if that's in your future planning. Appendix A is the risk assessment report. It's summarized in the main report. What I did there was apply the predicted levels for storm surge for the 5 categories of storm using information that NOAA developed that you saw in the earlier report, and applied that across this area. And then also look at how wind, sea, storm surge, wave impacts come into that. Appendix B summarizes the impacts of Hurricane Harvey as they relate to the Waterway House and of course, there's a lot in between and on both sides. Didn't try to break Port Aransas into it, but what you can see in Port Aransas is that extreme damage in some emerged there than they did from the wind. And that turned out to be significant because it had a lot of damage to docks, boathouses, things like that. That we generally didn't see further up the coast where we had the boat storm surge. Theirs was about 6 feet and Rockport was about 2. And then Appendix C is recommended actions for your future planning. Okay. And probably the lead one on there is to periodically revisit the risk assessment. Things change. This area, the risks out here really haven't changed since Hurricane Celia. But the potential impact from those risks, the magnitude of the damage this area could sustain has changed rapidly. And other changes can have an impact on that as time goes forward. One of the things we saw around the damaged area is that older structures that were not well maintained, were not built to modern codes, or in some cases very low elevations, they did not fare well. Newer construction built to the modern codes, particularly anything built after Hurricane Andrew in '92, when codes pretty much for the whole Gulf Coast and East Coast got upgraded. They fared much better. A big factor to consider is evacuation and re-entry planning. Decisions about evacuation and about allowing a re-entry are made by the mayor or the county judge, and people within their jurisdictions don't have a lot to say about it. Mandatory evacuation orders have a lot of impact on what happens in the area. For one thing, it really reduces the availability of emergency responders because they're pulled to duties to manage the evacuation. And a mandatory evacuation, if you were not in the area and were trying to come back, you probably would not be allowed to come back. And then after the storm, the mayor or the county judge will make a decision as to when people will be allowed back in, even to assess damage. And that could be anywhere from several days to several weeks. So that's something that has to be factored into it. And really, residents ought to be aware of how that process is managed. The county uses a tiered re-entry system. Tier 1 is emergency responders. Tier 2 is basically public officials with emergency response capabilities and responsibilities. Generally, 3 is to let in people who have businesses or other activities that would assist in the recovery operations. And then Tier 4 is all of us, all of you. And there's some discussion in there of how you could have a representative from the Property Owners Association or the management district be able to come in under Tier 3. And they would be limited, but there is a process for doing that. You have to review those issues and make those decisions and request authorization for people to come in before the start of the hurricane season. And that would be done with a letter to the city's emergency management office. Damage assessment, the plan in there that walks you through the damage assessment process addresses the bulkheads, the boat ramps, canal waters, bottoms, other property. Pre-planning is critical for that because you can decide if you're going to do it yourself or you're going to have it done by a contractor and make arrangements to get those folks in here. With pre-contract for that service, and your contractors will be able to come in under Tier 3. And then one of the key elements in damage assessment is to, of course, document the scope of damage. So what you have to be looking at is how you can compare the post-storm conditions to the pre-storm conditions. You have to be able to document the impacts. And typically that means having some records of the condition of your infrastructure. You've got a great start going on with the bulkhead inspection program. So that's going to be critical. You'll have to do periodic reviews to make sure that information is all kept up to date. You have the same kind of a situation with siltation and debris in the canals. And you already have a program for maintenance dredging and for occasional soundings. So you'll continue that and use those records as a basis for comparison to damage later on. And really, the process should be the same whether you think the management district is going to take over the bulkhead or not. Because you're, at some point, even if you decide you're going to do it through insurance, even if you decide you're going to do it yourself, you really need to know what you had when you started and what's there now, and figure out how you're going to deal with the damage in between. And then the last part is a discussion of the debris removal. I think the number that I had was 500 tons of debris removed from the canals here, not just from glancing below. You didn't have a lot of sunken boats. We had roughly 100 sunken boats in Rockport harbors up there. In PLA, somebody ended up with a 60-foot houseboat. Nobody in PLA owned a 60-foot houseboat. It came from several miles away from the harbor. So a lot of things can happen there in the way of debris. Docks, your storm surge here was relatively modest, so you didn't have a lot of uplifting and destruction of docks and boathouses. But you did have some. I think Williams reported, and Carter did as well. So that's something to keep in mind. Aransas County, with Rockport, Port Aransas, we had a population of 25,000 people in a fairly small county. The last number I saw was 2 million cubic yards of debris that had been moved. It represents about 85% of the first pass. And that's just in Aransas County, not all of the surrounding areas. So the potential to have a huge amount of debris generated is something that you have to take into consideration. But try to structure those pieces of the report so somebody who doesn't have the time to go through and do all the research and get it all in one place, be able to sit down and look at it, see what you need to do with the program, and then give you some guidelines for how to take the steps that you take to be prepared for the next one. And I suspect that you probably have some questions at that point, but I'll be available to answer those as long as it's not in like 6 days, because I don't know time.
You go hunting, and when you get back, we'll have studied this.
Yeah. Thanks for the report. We'll take a look at it. And is there any discussion?
I've got just did I miss something? Did you end up getting any statistics as to what our surge was and what the highest wind, or do you get
I tried to mention that in the report you'll see a sheet there where NOAA prepared a graphic to show the wind force you had down here. You're category 1. Yeah, you're category 1 down here. We up in Rockport for category 4, 130 miles an hour. Sustained winds, gusts documented to 150 throughout the area. So down here is lucky. As far as there were no gauges that I could find here in this area in Padre Isles for the storm surge, but figures I was able to come up with, talking to you, talking to William, riding around here and looking what's out there, looked like it was in the range of 4 to 5 feet. So I think it was 4.5 feet for that. Luckily most of your properties out here are high enough that when you had some of the soil inundated, you didn't have any of the homes flooded.
I noticed that Celia was 9'2".
Celia was 9.
Yep. Unfortunately, with Celia, there wasn't much out here in the entire area. And so there's limited information available, but there are some figures in the damage assessment report from Bob Hall here, both for Celia and for Harvey. And there's some figures in there for Packard Channel, which doesn't exist for Celia. But there for Harvey, I think that one was 60. So, over here, up in Rockport, a lot of us were less than lucky. You folks down here were lucky.
Super job. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tom.
Fascinating. I'll be up till late tonight.
We move to item number 6, consent agenda, secretary's report.
Okay, just submit the past month's meeting minutes for approval, the October 24th meeting. Anybody have any changes? Anybody agree with the meeting minutes? Any change in names for the submitted?
No point to me.
I don't see a problem.
All right. Make a motion to approve the minute. Second.
Any discussion?
Any discussion on minutes? Nope.
All right.
We have a motion from Carter and a second from Jack.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Those same
Passes. Submit minutes last month.
Move to committee reports. We'll start with the compliance committee and then the architectural control committee is after that. So Leslie Hess is out tonight. Can you give a
Yes.
proxy to me?
Mary. She gave a proxy to me.
Okay.
And Mary Alice is going to do the
Okay.
report.
Compliance Committee Board Report, PIPOA, November 28, 2017. Members include Tom Cable, Henry Quigley, Mary Alice Eskridge, Marcia Brunstone, Scott Smith, Megan Fury, Tara Salai Eldine, and Leslie Hayes. The committee's role is to provide guidance and suggestions to the board related to compliance and education to the community, as well as bring forth the recommendations from the community as a whole. At times, the committee may take on a direct educator role to the community if deemed appropriate. The board will review the suggestions and then pass the recommendations on to the staff via the executive director for implementation. The compliance@pipoa.net email has been established and verified that all members received the emails. It wasn't utilized by the community this past month. We completed the initial definitions for the violations and tested them with over 100 pictures from the community. The pictures included obvious violations, questionable properties, and some that were in good standing. Overall, each member utilizing the attached ranking were able to come within a few points of each other, leading us to confirm that the point system is a useful tool. The system allows the compliance officer to use a checklist of defined issues. After marking the checklist, the compliance officer adds up the points accumulated based on their observations. If the checklist of points does not total to 25 points and has no items in the significant or severe category, no action is taken. The home may have some issues, but it is recognized that usually no home is perfect and the overall property value probably isn't affecting the surrounding homes. If the checklist totals to 25 or more points or has an item in the significant or severe category, an initial letter would be sent out to the homeowner asking them to correct the issues identified. If the points total 40 or more or have items in the severe category, the letter sequence would begin with a firmer letter since there is either a health or safety issue that needs to be addressed immediately, or the homeowner has significant issues that visually can be noted to be affecting the surrounding property values that need to be addressed immediately. Next, we are planning to schedule a town hall. We want to display the series of pictures for the community, asking them to do their own scoring to see if they also reach similar conclusions using the checklist, still recognizing that folks will never agree 100% and that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. We would welcome further feedback regarding the definitions in each category as well as the overall approach before asking this to be adopted by the board. There are 2 categories of violations that we need board and community feedback on. The first is the violation of unused items in the front area. The initial feedback we have from the community is that basketball hoops should be excluded from this violation. They are large in nature, not as easy to store, and generally do not take away from property values. We recognize they should never be stored by the street, as this would be a safety issue, but also recognize that they are stored on the driveway or close to the home. The general homeowner would not consider this as affecting property values in a negative manner. The second is a request for legal guidance and community opinions on inoperable stored vehicles and trailers, and whether they are registered, particularly for the military, but also for the general homeowner. We felt more feedback from the community was needed, as well as legal advice before this can be further defined. The focus continues on, does the issue decrease, increase, or have no effect on the property values of the community? After the town hall, we would meet again to incorporate the feedback so we can create a final version for approval that can be implemented and hopefully help to bring our community back together on this topic with a feeling that all are working in the same direction to ensure our community continues to represent us in a positive manner. On membership, we have one member that hasn't attended meetings for quite some time or responded to emails we have sent out. So we'll be removing him from the meeting roster. Tarek Salah Eldin. We are not asking for additional members at this time. This is not a permanent committee, and when it began, I indicated I was picking a large number of members initially, knowing that some would probably drop off over time, but that kept us from losing continuity of project, since it involved a big education curve at the beginning. After completion of this phase, hopefully over the next couple of months, if the board chooses to ask this committee to move forward with combining all the various POA written documents, policies that relate to compliance, we would open up for new applications to possibly expand the committee. That would be with a new goal in mind. Another option would be to have some or all members of this committee work with some of all of the ACE committee to bring the written documents into agreement, as we have found multiple that conflict. Finally, we also recognize that there are areas that we didn't consider in this process, such as should parking be considered when determining violations. This was a heated topic among the current members with no clear definition in sight. Since the community was not accepting of the initial compliance program as it was implemented, and the board had not tasked us with creating yet more possible violations, we did not tackle additional items in this phase. This has been a difficult task with some heated discussions. When this committee began, we knew it would involve many hours of some hard discussions with the ability to openly disagree without retribution. Not all our members have agreed with each other along the way, but I am very proud of their ability to produce a work product to bring back to the community, and I ask the board at this time to commend them for giving of their time and efforts to bring them this far. Let's see how the community feels about this new phase of compliance and what else we can do to make it better. Respectfully submitted on behalf of the Compliance Committee, Leslie Hess. She also asked me to mention that it is our intent in the near future, it's probably starting in January, to educate the community by writing articles that express the definition of each of the 15 rules that must be followed to have your properties be in compliance. That way you can't say, well, I didn't know, or I never know, no one told me, or whatever. So we will discuss them and run probably the articles starting in January and again in June, and just keep it going in that manner. That way, people coming and going would always see them and be aware of what needs to be done to be considered in compliance with the rules. And perhaps that will also increase the ability for people to obey them and be aware of them, and not have it, that excuse is the reason they don't do it. Anything else? And also, 7 of the 15 rules that are followed by the POA are actually city codes as well. They're not just jobs. So keep that in mind, that we also have city codes we must follow. Thank you.
Any discussion by the board? Questions?
I think we ought to thank the volunteers on that committee for their time and y'all putting that system together. As a board. She asked for it.
Absolutely.
I did.
Definitely thank all the volunteers for sure. I do have a couple of questions. If you can make some notes. There's a few next items, town hall meetings, and after the town hall meeting, there will be another meeting. Can we get some dates on that? Can you work, Becky, with Leslie and the committee to figure out those dates, get those published, so folks can get that on the calendar? Then I also have a question on the second bullet. There was a overall each member utilizing the attached ranking were able to come within a few points. Do you know how many people participated in that exercise on the committee?
4 or 5 was the number that participated.
Okay.
And then that would be it, Leslie in that group.
Okay.
And how many members are on the committee now?
Well,
I think
if
we
we
started
remove,
Not about 9.
We got
8 was the
7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7 is what is shown on this list, and Tarek is gone, so that's 6 and Leslie.
Oh. Okay.
Was there some number, did we come up with a number that it should have been, or did Leslie come up?
Yeah, I think we had 8 when we began. All right, thank you.
Thanks,
One person resigned.
Yeah.
Sarah was left.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Move on to the Architectural Control Committee. Brent Hess, did I see you in here? We have an ACC rep tonight?
Just me.
All right, just me.
So is anybody giving the ACC?
Well, I was the liaison, I had a no vote, and I was there. We had discussion about Alan Joe's coffee shop. They worked with him on his plan. He was very open to discussion and promises a great destination. That was big. Oh, then we also had a cycle shop that asked for a wall, so that a gate, so that they could keep their golf carts in at night, and that's on Waterway 22. And ACC is treading on different kind of waters here because these are commercial properties, so it's in our parameter, so they have to meet city code for sure, but they are asking us for input. So that's something that we need to, or the ACT needs to start looking at some guidelines for as those little bitty lots start being developed, because it's very small highway frontage, so parking becomes an issue. That was an issue with Island Joe's. There's only 9 parking spaces because he wanted to utilize for the coffee shop.
And that means coming?
Yeah.
There's a code requirement.
Yeah, 200 feet.
Yeah.
So it needs code for the city.
Wow.
I don't know how we could enforce something that's.
Or the gate, because there's a precedent, two buildings down, there's a gate.
Yeah, and the height was the deal there, and it was within the height. And same with Island Joe's Coffee Shop, there was a height deal there.
How about that house, has that gotten?
That wasn't discussed that day, Lisa helped me, by memory, because that wasn't an issue at that point in time. But I think the house has since been lowered to the top of its height.
Correct.
And I have been by there, it really is a very attractive looking property. Now we acknowledge, or I acknowledge personally, that I think the builder screwed up by not coming forward and asking for a permit. But, yeah, that's the way that goes. And I think that was it. That was all the variances for that day. We have 85, as of that day in November, 85 developing homes being built in the area, which is up by 10 since like the end of summer. So it's like crazy.
There's a note on this report that 2 applicants for the ACC openings were discussed, Tom Cable and Ray Moraes. Right? Okay.
That's right.
First of all, thank you guys for volunteering. And have we had an opportunity to look at those applicants and make a recommendation, or do you need some time?
I think we need a little bit more time. It did advertise. It was supposed to be in the mail last week also, so that everybody has the opportunity.
Okay, so it'd be good to get that spot filled. And if we can get a recommendation from you on that, and then I guess send that out to the board. Any other discussion on that?
And we still need, since Linda Charlo turned out, so to speak, we still need a chair for that.
So I think that chair is Jackie Carlson. That was
right. And but she's been leaving in March.
So she's chairing until March. Yep.
So I need to March to be here.
It's right around the corner.
We'll have a park built by then.
Late.
All right. Yes, Marvin.
Can you give a little more information on this, the house, that 3-story house? Did they or didn't they have a permit from the city? Did they have a permit from the POA? What is the timeline and the process here?
They had a permit from the city. And then they did talk to us. They provided us with their drawing of the home design and asked if they would be able to get a variance for that. And they were told no, that it needed to be at the 35 foot, not 38. And through the process, they went ahead and they built it to the 38. And when that was brought to our attention, I spoke to the builder numerous times. Brent S. Trying to remember who else, somebody else at the same time with them. He agreed to bring it down, and he did. And so the height is in compliance now. There was a concern that the home was built too forward, and so went out and measured it, and he actually has like 1 foot and 6 inches in his favor. So it is not forward. We are watching the house. I'm speaking to the builder on pretty much a every other day basis to ensure that everything else is kept in compliance. There are some other concerns about it being so tall, that the runoff, and how are they going to make sure and ensure that the water is draining correctly. So I spoke to him today about that. I spoke to Gilbert at the city, who's also helping with it, making sure that they grade it right and that the grass is planted so that it will drain to the bulkhead or to the street to ensure that, because there are some concerns.
I didn't hear you say, did they have a POA permit or not?
They didn't have the permit when they started. They talked to Linda, and she told them that they could build at 35, but not 38. And then it was later, we got with the builder and required him to go ahead and submit all his paperwork and denied the request to build to 38. So there was a slip of some paperwork that took place whenever it was originated.
And there was also a definition, the city called the extra 3 feet a tower.
Yes.
And so that is why the city gave permission. We've never had a tower presented to us in my recollection.
And with their definition with a tower, it can actually go up to 40 foot. But that is not what our covenants will state that we can do. 35 is our maximum. And the builder today said that he had talked to the city also and trying to come up with a plan so that anybody that is interested that wants to come over and see how tall it is now is to actually extend a 2x4, I think nailed to the roof, and be able to and then use a laser to be able to measure it and make sure that anybody that wants to come on site at that time can witness the measurement.
We'll definitely be there.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, if it's an eyesore, that's an eyesore. You actually block the other person's house across from my dad's. When you drive down the street, you can't even see the front of their house. And wait till they put the big granite stairs coming out. You're not even able to see their house. Those poor people are 80 years old and they're so upset they can't even stand up. So it's a mess. Never should happen. Mike.
Builders are aware that they cannot, should not, or at their own risk, start a project without breaking up the rule, right?
They know this, and this is not the
It's
first time.
pretty common in our business, engineering, construction, development, that you take a risk if you, and verbals are not.
There will be no title policy issued on that road until that document is signed. So build at your own risk. There would be no road completed on it.
And when he lowered it, he wanted to know who was going to help share the cost in this. And we let him know that wasn't coming from the POA. And so he's well aware of that, and he took it down. That was at his own cost to make sure that it was in compliance and that we will continue to measure it. We will continue to watch all the other items to ensure, and that he is well aware that if it does not comply, he will have to make the changes.
Do we have any enforcement mechanisms now? Can we fine the guy for this, for starting without a POA permit? Anything we can do to him?
What I understand is if we have an issue with the builder, we require them to put a deposit down, and that's where we can hold fines from. And then if we have a problem with the builder, we increase that to $2,500. And so that will definitely be, and that's what we have.
But we don't have a particular fine number for going ahead with a construction.
We have a general $50 fine for any violation of the ACC requirements. But I mean, the bigger issue is he can be enjoined at any time for violation.
And got close to it, huh?
And yeah, I mean, that was the threat on this one, and that's what finally got him to it.
What about damages to the people next door? What can they get?
The law in Texas is very clear that no one has a right of a view across their neighbor's property. That is the law, that's the way it is. Just because your next door neighbor is a vacant lot doesn't mean that it's always going to be a vacant lot. People have a property right in Texas to build on their own property. And
within the
guidelines, the setback has to be the prescribed setback, and the height has to be within the limited height. But people do have a legal right to build on their own property, even if it might damage someone's view that they previously enjoyed across their property. That's the law.
All right. Okay. Is there any other discussion? All right, we're going to move on. Council Waterways Committee, Nita.
Thanks to a lot of help from a lot of people, including people not on our committee, We're starting to get the signs back up. We've got started the survey for where the navigation posts need to go.
Nita, could you come to the mic, please? Thank you.
Sorry, I've been sitting so long, it's hard to With a lot of help from a lot of people and volunteers, we're getting the no-wake signs back up. And Richard Pittman and Carl and Kevin have been out for days and good weather and bad, trying to find out where we need the navigation post put back up and the markings and all of that. And so if it's okay with you, I'd like to give a report.
Sure.
He was there, I wasn't.
Him being Richard?
Yes, sir. Richard Pittman.
Richard Pittman, 14325 Reed Street here in Corpus Christi, Texas, on the island. I'm not totally sure I call this a report because over the last 2 weekends of being out on the water, I want to end up giving Carl Rubenstein, Kevin Kendrickson, who were with me on the first weekend, in a 25-mile-an-hour southeast wind and a 30-mile-an-hour north wind. And Bob Ferret, who helped us last weekend, to realize that if you have a pole that you can stick in on the back of your boat, it does help, but the wind still swings you around. So, not easy, as I thought it would be, to document some of this. But what I do have, again, not a formal report, preliminary. I'm going to let this side share one, I'm going to let this side share the other. And so first, cover page here is kind of showing the process. So Kevin is on the front of the boat. We're trying to tie up to a piling. Sometimes when there wasn't piling there, we knew there needed to be one there to try to anchor, to get the anchor a hold. And Brent, the jet pump, a 30 horsepower motor with an inverter that only does 430 watts. Your boat will not run that, so
need a good electrical engineer to figure that out.
Anyway, trying to pound them in, worked out better. We might should do something other than 1-inch PVC, although we got 40 joints of 1-inch PVC right now we're working with. So, bottom line is, what we're doing is when we go up to a piling that's existing, we kind of evaluate it. And you'll see my spreadsheet as we go into this to kind of see. So what we're doing is we're measuring the condition of the pile, we're measuring the diameter of the pile, we're measuring the depth of the water where the pile is, we're measuring the amount of pile there is sticking above the water. All of them have to have signs replaced. Most of them are missing. Any of them that are there do not have reflectivity. They've probably been there for 15 years. A Coast Guard approved sign only is approved for 7 years. So all of those are going to have to be replaced. So you see Kevin on the front of the boat. Basically, we're taking blue paint, blue because that's what I have in the garage. Put an X on the pole. We try to put a number. If you guys know navigation, I mean, when you're coming from deep water or from the main body into your port area, you end up having your odd numbers on the left with green squares. You end up having your triangle and the even numbers on the right. So we started trying to paint the numbers on there, but when you start getting the pole 20, to try to get a circle in the wind, not that easy. You can see the PVC is not all straight that we're sticking in where it needs to be marked. However, I do hope that when this comes to be, and I hope it comes to be fairly soon, because if you look at my third photograph here with our blue X on it, between the seagulls and the setting on the top of the piling, the droppings are already starting to cover up our X's. Anyway, the PVC pipe to differentiate between the other PVC that you see out there stuck in the ground, we painted the tops of those blue. So that's kind of in the process. I'm calling this preliminary because I need to make another pass. The numbers don't quite add up, but I need to make another pass in the boat going down the channel to make sure, if you go to the next sheet, that the North Canal markers, what I have here is accurate. So, you end up seeing in my spreadsheet, as you guys are going to pretty pictures of the maps right off the bat, but anyway, in the spreadsheet, we've got the diameter pole, the depth above water, whether to replace or not, and whether we are actually adding a marker, and then we've got comments over in the far right column. The North Canal is much worse than the South Canal. And the North Canal, being much longer, it's got more markers in it. And there are, on the pass right now, I want to go back and evaluate this with the other guys again, but right now it looks like we need to either add or replace 19 markers in the North Canal.
Wow, that many?
19 of them, yes.
So is there a rule of how far they are apart?
Well,
Coast Guard?
so I've done all the research. I'm not a navigation engineer. But I've done all the
Supposed to be
research.
half a mile apart.
Well, this is you're there coastal. This is not.
Channel markers, yeah.
Yeah, but in a canal like this, basically what you do is you put markings where you think there ends up being something that could be an obstruction, like a
S-curve.
like a curve, like a turn. You try to mark it where the water's getting shallow, which over in the North Canal, we've got some
That's
areas.
right where they're missing, they got ran over. Yeah.
Right.
Where the S-curve, where the curve is.
So we've got 19 in the North Canal. All I did Sunday, so that was 2 weekends, 2 Saturdays over in the North Canal to get this information. Sunday, I made a quick, what I would call a recon mission over in the South Canal, and with a quick pass over there, and we're going to go back, Carl and I are going to do this Saturday, get some of the same information that we have on the North Canal. And over there, it appears that we've got about 3 markers. 2 that are missing, and 1 out of the very intercoastal area that needs to be replaced. I'm kind of basing this all around a 10-inch diameter top that we should be having out of the water. Over in the south, over in the North Canal, we've got some of them that have been replaced with like a 6x6 square post. We've got one over there right there. We've got tops that are broken off. We've got some 8-inch poly, not 10-inch. Anyway, okay, so that's the part on the markers. If you go to the third page, you'll end up seeing some of the, this is kind of what I'm thinking we're going to end up doing is these from Coast Guard approved. I'm not necessarily, whoever the contractor is that gets this, we're going to have a little short spec on what he needs to be providing. That's what I'm looking at. The ones that we have right now are 24 by 24, the square ones, so I think that's fine. And the triangles are 24 by 24. I actually haven't found a 24 by 24 yet. They're all 36-inch triangles. So anyway, that's the triangle. The poles, I was hoping to get by with 20-footers, but when you get out to the intercoastal side, the water's deep enough out there that a 20-footer, we're not going to be able to get 10 foot in the ground out there. So I'm thinking of jumping it up to a 25. And poles like this, if you get a 25-foot pole and you start with a 10-inch butt, every 10 feet, it gets 1 inch smaller. That's how trees grow. So basically what you do, I found out, because I was talking to some people that do this, and you turn the pole upside down and you drive the smaller piece into the mud, and you have the taller piece sticking up. Makes sense? I see you laughing around there. I'm thinking, and I don't know that this is the right one, somebody, you guys are missing the green flashing light on the South Canal. I know, but there used to be. So I don't know what happened. Oh,
I think ours is out too. I think.
No, I was out last night.
There was a light on our side, yeah.
But it's a pretty pinchy little light we have. I know we don't want to compete with intercoastal waterway and all that, but I think we ought to have. So I've got a light that we got a Coast Guard approved that I've thrown in here that I've attached. That is what I'm suggesting that we put on the north and the south canals at the entrance.
By the way, TERS ISAC is looking.
Depending on what time y'all do this on Saturday, you could just do it from my porch if you want to, and I got a whole fridge full of beer.
Well, we'll stop by your place after we get through.
Remember, you're in church.
Yeah, thanks. for
So
doing
appreciate
this.
y'all's work on
It is very dangerous at night, very dangerous.
It's hard anyway with the wind, they really do deserve a hand, they work really hard.
I think we actually had some materials donated. Carl, you donated all the PVC?
Yeah, can I just make a comment? First of all, working with Richard and Evan and Bob, Brett, and Nita has been a pleasure. I've actually bled for the cause, by the way. And I just wanted to make this point when I think you're right, I work to help you. When I think you're wrong, I think you understand that, you know, I fight for what I think's right. This is a project I'm really pleased to be helping on.
All right, thank you.
Please,
Need it?
Yes, one last thing in the package y'all have, there was the canal and waterways and Bulkhead rules. One of the things that's come out with the no wake zone signs is I've gotten a lot of volunteers because their kids got dumped out of a kayak right in front of their house, or they've taken up paddleboarding and they're getting dumped. I believe our look crew actually had some problems trying to stay in place as boats were speeding by with their wakes. And it gets back to the ACC thing of people not knowing. 2 people came to our meetings and they didn't know when they came down here, you know, where it was, where to go. Some of the main canals, there's no longer places to put no wake signs. So this was something we thought might help to mail this out with the bills. That's the only way we can guarantee that everybody gets it, reads it, signs it, and returns it. The sheriff is out patrolling. I've actually seen him go by twice since they started by my house. I've been trying to get to Isaac because it's the city ordinance that established our no wake zone. And I also found out from the Moon that part of our annexation deal apparently was for the city to enforce safety on our waterways. So it is a city issue. The city didn't know about it. They sent their lawyer to find out about it. But I think it's very important that we push for the city to enforce it. And also along the lines of the debris. I was out today for boat for the first time, thanks to Carl. And the bulkhead situation is really bad, particularly on the curved tips. They got hit by Harvey, but I think it was before that, and a lot of that is a result of the waves. The washouts and all of that is occurring primarily where you have humongous boat traffic and lots of wakes. And unless we do something about it, our bill for repairs, for bulkhead caps, for washouts, and hopefully not a Primavera thing again, but it's coming. And people are starting to contact me since my email's on the website. The canals and waterways, and having me come over and look at their house and what the washouts are doing to it. And in some cases, it's cracking their walls.
All right. Where did you observe these walls damaged where boat traffic stopped?
Hey, Carter, I think we've got a condition assessment that Naismith did. We've got a lot of GIS information that they've done, the color coding and all that. I think that's probably where we should rely on that information. Okay. You know, because they did that assessment, category 1 through 5, red and green and blue and all that, and I think that's available, and that's what we ought to probably base it on. Okay.
In addition to perhaps attaching this to the billing, this needs to be added to the new owner's packets.
I would request that we have John look at this from a legal standpoint and enforceability. I have some questions there.
I thought it was pretty
well, actually,
myself.
So if we can do that.
Well, actually, there's no enforceability, if you will, on us. All it does is tell us the consequences. It says that it may result in a ticket or a fine. That's not from us. That's from the sheriff, possibly the city police. Not necessarily from us. A lot of people are not aware of that. And The parking lot thing, there's no change there. Again, it's just to let them know, and I've been volunteering and helping and driving around in boat ramps, and we're starting to have a real problem, as you were pointing out, 84 houses this year, 85. A lot of those are land lots. A lot of the land lots have some trailers, and they need some place to launch, and our boat ramps are filling up. I would suggest, if possible, we start looking at maybe finding a place to put in another boat ramp, maybe next to the sewage plant or something. That would also cut down the no-wake problem, because it's right there by the house. And parking, because people that live around the boat ramps are now starting to complain about boats, trailers being parked kind of halfway up over the curb, which does in their weed barrier and all that sort of thing. So then they get a nasty letter about their weeds. It's kind of a vicious circle. But I don't see in here anything really that says anything about.
Whatever they can.
Thank you.
Okay, question, for the areas that Nita's referring to that were damaged apparently by the storm, did they assess those before the storm, or are they going back after to maybe reassess? Might not be a bad idea to help address, or they may be green for good before the storm, but now that we had all that happen, it may not be a bad idea to get at least those north-facing points.
You guys had some washout reports. I think they did some of that inspection.
Hezzy has done that. We're working with our compliance officer. She's been working with him and scheduling everybody that we've been contacted that has had a washout. They've been reviewed. They're in order of need, and they're working through the process. So when somebody calls you and asks you to go look at their washout, if you'll refer that to us so that we can get Hezzy to go take a look at it and make sure that it's on our list.
Right. Everybody that's contacted me tells me that they've already contacted the PIPOA office. Otherwise, yes, I will.
Well, and what we have found and reported last month is that people are thinking that it is a breach in the bulkhead, but it is a washout due to the erosion from the wave action. And that's their responsibility for repairing that instead of it being a breach in the bulkhead itself.
If you remember in our meetings, we talked about the fact that the boat ramps are public, where it comes into the fact that someone's parked on the boat ramp. That has to have a POA sticker, but those ramps are public.
Right, but the parking lot is private.
Right, but when on your, here on your rules, it says, for a POA member to use canals and boat ramps, section must be signed. In return, they can use the boat ramp to launch, but they can't leave their trailer if they're not a POA. And that's real, that's where the sticky wicket comes in.
Are you talking about number 3?
No, I'm talking about your in bold, the very last, before the address, where it says, for a POA member to use the canals and boat ramps, the section below must be signed and returned. Well, that's fine for the members, but remember the boat ramps themselves are open to the public.
I realize that, and there's nothing we can do about that.
No, I know, this is one of the things that needs to be kind of refined a little bit.
Okay.
Because you can't, you just can't. John, right?
Well, I mean, it would be, I think, excellent to post a sign at each boat ramp having these rules to make people aware of them.
Right.
And help it. In order to say that POA members can't use the canals unless they sign a return form, we don't have any real regular authority to do that.
Well, now you have to shut, you got public people coming in.
Anybody can use the canals.
Yeah.
I mean, they're
What are you gonna do to them?
people come in, and so but the top part, so the 1, 2, 3. I mean, I think the whole focus of the committee's recommendation is to try and provide greater education to people using our canals and waterways of what the rules are. And if you had signage out there that was maintained that said that would be good. Having people sign the form in order to motor their boat down the canal, I don't think
but
it's
you
practical.
you could just switch it a little bit and say, I'm aware of, thank you, you know. And,
Well,
yeah, no.
I mean, most people watching their votes don't have a pen in their pocket to sign.
No, but yeah, that's true.
It's not.
I have a fishing rod, but no pen.
I carry mine everywhere I go except when I'm watching a vote, but it's, but I think it's an excellent idea to get signage at each vote ramp.
We don't have
advising people.
Yeah, we have a lot of signs.
We don't.
But we've got to refine it.
We don't have visited, we don't have something
No.
like visited vote ramps.
No.
It says you can't park here unless you got a sticker, doesn't it?
It also says it's a no-wake zone.
It says it's a
also
no-wake,
says-
yeah.
It does say all that, but most people don't read it, I mean, let's be honest.
Well, we do.
And a lot of our boat traffic is not from the boat ramps, it's from the
Bylaws.
homeowners. No, it's from the homeowners on the wet lots, like the couple that came to our meeting, who did not realize actually
What a wake was.
what a wake was, or that sort of thing. If you want to eliminate anything from the common sense, actually lower the sign and return.
Let's wait on, we need to review it. We've got a very full agenda, so let's review it and let's take some action. If we need signage or whatever, then let's get it done. Thank you.
One last, very simple thing, John. Perhaps under item number 2, we could mention that this comes from law enforcement, not from the BOA response. I think that would be confusing, and I think that the BOA's got somebody with a ticket book passed out.
They do have somebody.
Could you put that,
All right, so
the balance being controlled by the county and the
Yeah,
city,
the county.
or is that
I've
slash?
seen these stickers on windows.
John, could you review it and get some language back to the, clean it up a little bit? All right, we'll move on to bylaws, policies, and procedures committee. Marvin?
All right, we've had a couple of meetings. Our most recent meeting, we discussed some policies and or procedures for the upcoming election. Unfortunately, we were unable to reach a consensus on some of these things. We had a very interesting meeting. Probably what we need to do is to try to refine the 18 points that were put on the table for consideration, and then work them into whatever agreement we can come to and put them into the existing, as John has brought forward, procedures and bylaws for elections. That's pretty much where I think we left that. And the same can be said, although we didn't get to the check cashing and that kind of thing, check writing, at that particular meeting, that needs to be addressed and incorporated into the existing procedures and bylaws we have. But setting them out, here's our policy and then the list of procedures that can be followed. So it makes it easy for the staff to discern between policy and procedures.
My turn?
Sure.
Go ahead. At least what I've seen was just your proposal to these things. It's not like we adopted 18 or anything.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
you're correct. We didn't vote, we didn't adopt anything.
So we're not putting them in. The idea is that when we do decide on the ones that we're going to use, we will mesh them into something we already have.
Meld would be a better word.
Meld, excuse me. Scholastic.
Yes, you're correct.
Thank you. Got it.
Okay, John, so I've got a lot of paper here, so
Well, I just was trying to provide you, we have an existing policy and procedure on each of these items, on the elections and on check signing. And so in order to try and, as Marvin commented, to get it all consolidated in one place, I put out the existing policy, Marvin's proposal, your comments, Leslie's comments, and then try to get just a very rough draft for you to mark up and do whatever you want to try to incorporate the laws all together. But I mean, you can start from any draft that you like, but it just would be a good idea to have the existing policies part of the process. procedures, some of that is actually covered by state law that we have to follow.
Yep.
On the upcoming election, in order for any of this to be effective, I know there's a suggestion that there be a public drawing by lot for places on the ballot. Leslie commented that could be done if we need the candidates forum in January. Actually, that would be too late. We need to have the ballots prepared and printed by that time. And so one thing that we might do, unless you're ready to take action on this entire policy tonight, is just give us your guidance if you'd like the executive director to give everybody 10 days notice if we're going to do the drawings for places on the ballot in a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
They're welcome to be there or not. And we're going to do that. That's one thing that's somewhat time sensitive. If you didn't do this till next month, it might be too late.
Because some people, if my name is Albert, then I'm first, and if his Zoe or whatever he's
Just do it.
let's just do, make a 10-day notice, like John said.
Notice and have anybody that wants to be there and watch the drawing.
Draw the names out of the hat and be done.
So the people that aren't there, you draw their name too?
Sure.
They're getting noticed.
The person who's going to draw the names will be anybody designated, but it's just people can witness this. There's several that I have in their drawing, and every name is going to get drawn whether they have a representative present or not.
Yeah.
We've got to get the names on file.
So is this a policy?
It would eventually become a policy. I only bring it up for your consideration now because if you don't do anything until the December meeting or the January meeting, it's too late. So that's the only thing that I noticed is
very simple deal. Let's just get the candidates. We've got 7 candidates, and draw their names out, put them on the ballot, and let's go. So, can you get that on, fella? All right. Martin, is there anything else?
No, that's all I have.
And I would suggest if we're gonna vote on something, let's get the cleaned up copy. Let's put this back on the agenda for December and vote on these policies. And that can simply just be the cleaned up copy routed around everybody so they're aware that we're voting on next month.
Whole policy.
All right. Thank you. All right. Security Patrol Committee report. Becky?
Yeah, how much is it?
Well, we were scheduled to meet last week, and on the day of the meeting by 4 o'clock, 3 of the members of the team had to cancel out. So we went ahead and canceled that meeting. We have another one set for next Wednesday. So we'll have our first meeting then and be able to report back to everyone the different options and the direction that we want to present to the board on the different ways that you can secure your homes. If we want a private company to come in, the committee will just have to sit down and come up with a process of what they're going to present to the board.
Somebody's done some research on that already. Yeah, 70. Somebody earlier 70.
I've got
what
that.
is that math? Did you do that? I couldn't find it.
Yeah, but he emailed that to me, so that'll be included when I pass out to the committee.
Really?
All right, we'll move on to the executive director report.
All right. Wanted to report that since I started with the POA, we have a total of 20 different open records requests, and right now we are caught up. Some of you have been very patient with trying to get the information to you. There is one that the member is coming by Thursday to review the information, but everything has been pulled for that. The staff have used a lot of time over the last couple of months to get all this information for you. We've gotten better at it. We're being able to, we've posted all the books out in the conference area so that people can come in and sit down at the table and review through that.
So you're reducing the duplication of that?
Correct.
That's a time saver and a money saver because we spent a lot of money doing this.
And we're getting more efficient at being able to email information when we can, or guide members to the right place on the website to be able to find the information readily available for themselves. They can look through it. Some of the documents are very long and you might only want a couple of pages out of it instead of the whole document. So we've got a little bit better at being able to provide exactly what you're looking for.
On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank the staff for the diligence that has been exercised and the patience needed.
Thank you. We're getting pretty good at it. Security Expo, we had that this past couple weeks ago. I was very nervous, hoping that we would at least have 10 people that would show up. And there were 41 people in the room, which was really nice. Of course, I would have loved 140, but that was a nice beginning for everybody to come out. We had 3 new vendors that talked about what services they provide and what equipment that they have. So that was really nice. Alarm Security, Alliance, and Dynamark were the 3 agencies that were there. And several people spoke to them, and I think have made appointments to gather some additional information. So that was nice to be able to share with everyone. We did print out some information that I got off the internet that just talked about how you can help secure your home. And as it was stated earlier, the police department tells us to make sure that you keep your garage door closed, your car's locked, that the longer you can deter somebody from getting into where they want, the faster they will move on to another target. And if we do that throughout with the entire community, then it'll be known everywhere. Don't bother coming out here because we're taking care of our property out here. The winter newsletter, we're starting to work on that. I'm asking anybody that's interested, or if you know someone that would like to be a creative writer, please get a hold of us and submit any ideas that you have for articles. I would love to have an article about the wake and the damage that causes, that wakes cause to our bulkheads. You just don't think that isn't increasing, but that is just time and time again, and it doesn't happen right away, but over time there's a lot of damage there. So keeping the weight down is really something important. So I'm looking for somebody that would like to create a good article for us. Things as far as things to do in the park. We've got a new wonderful park that's coming up, and I would like to encourage members to plan activities to be out in that park. What would they like to see? What would they like to come out and do? There's going to be the volleyball court. There's the baseball. So we need somebody, a concert. We need to have, people plan activities, and let's talk about what we can do as a community and families to get out there. We're working on preparations for the March election. We do have 7 candidates, as Brent mentioned earlier. The ballots will be sent out no sooner than 90 days and before the election, and no later than 10 days. The ballots, if you're going to mail them in, need to be at the CPA office at least 8 days prior to the election to ensure that they get there. We're going to be sending all this information out to all of our members. We'll have it put in the moon, so that the island moon, so that everybody is aware of the timeline and the process. We'll have it on the website, so if in doubt, give us a call and we'll be able to make sure that we get you up to date on all of that. We will hold, most likely 2 get to know the candidates in January and February, so please make sure to, when you see that, make plans to come and meet the candidates and be able to ask them questions and listen to what they would like to talk to the members about. I would like to bring up something about the island cleanup. After Harvey, we have spent a lot of time working with the debris. When it comes into the canals, that's coming from different areas, different people's property that's been destroyed. They put it up on the sides. We knew that was going to happen. We put the boat ramps to work and put in dumpsters so that we could maintain that and take care of it. What we're finding now, the dumpsters are all gone, but what we're finding is that a lot of people out in the community are having work done to their homes, remodeling from the storm, or just a good time to remodel, I'm not sure, but they are taking the debris and stacking it up on vacant lots. Not their lots, but somebody else's lots. And a lot of times we're seeing it on our canal ends.
So we're having to talk to homeowners or property owners that don't live here and let them know that their lot is been stacked up. And they have not given permission, and so then they've got to find somebody to come and get it. You know, it turns into a burden for them. On the canal ends, what we're finding is every time we send out crews to pick up the debris, it isn't 2 days later that there's more debris where that was. And so it's not necessarily coming out of the water on the canal ends, but people are putting it there from their reconstruction and putting up a new fence. So please help us by watching in the neighborhood and making sure somebody is not dumping illegally, because we're having to spend POA funds to remove the debris from our common areas. And so if y'all could just help us be watchful eyes out there so that we can get that stopped. I think that people wait, and after we take the debris, they wait until we've driven off, and then they put something else out there. So please let us know if you see someone that's dumping. If you have a neighbor that's doing something, let us know so that we can address the issue.
Excuse me. Is there any one particular location that seems to get more dumping than another?
There are several canal ends. Lisa, I'm still trying to familiarize myself with all the names of the streets. Tesoro is one of the areas that just keeps reoccurring. That is one area that we see.
Refrigerator that never got picked up.
But
And
there's
it
nice
just
poles.
continues.
Yeah, there's some nice poles out there.
There's some 18, 20-foot poles on my street there.
Yeah, we've seen
And
that.
the gentleman with that refrigerator has contacted the city, has contacted Becky, he's begging somebody to, you know, and they just say, well, one last sweep and they'll get his refrigerator off of there. But it's still there.
And
Just
we're,
out for a while.
yeah, we're working with the city on.
But it's on his property. But it's right next to a canal, and so people think that that's abandoned, so they abandon other stuff.
Yes, we drove by one day, going back the next day to look at it. There were some palm tree fronds that had been put there and a sack of garbage, so it just, people just continue to use it.
Open that bag up, there's gonna be an envelope in there,
Yeah.
I promise.
We had a case of arson at the POA. If you've been by the park, the porta potty didn't burn, I want to say it melted to the ground, like Wizard of Oz. I mean, it went down. So it was a terrible mess, blue goop on the ground. That's being, some of it was cleaned up today. They're coming back tomorrow, and they're delivering a new porta potty tomorrow.
And to add to that, there are plastic boxes that were placed around the gardens for the newsletters to be placed in. And some of them have obviously been smashed, not blown over, but smashed with a hammer type.
Newsletter for what?
The newsletter for the gardens.
Oh.
They're real estate boxes that are donated by, and so when I pick up pieces and try to get rid of them, because if people just like graffiti, if you leave it, you know, people. But this was malicious, this was not, you know, so if you see somebody doing something, say something.
Well, I've been driving by 4 chairs on Commodores
Pick
for
those
a
up?
friggin' week. And they're sitting on the back of my truck now. There's nobody, they're nice chairs.
I saw them.
I mean, somebody stole one of them, there were 4, didn't steal it. There were 4 and now there was only 3, so somebody made a garage chair out of it. But anyway, where should I dump these bad boys? Off the back of my truck. Back up to your truck and put them, and you'll put them in the office dumpster. Seriously, do we have it? They're nice. You want them for the Rams?
Oh, I can use them.
They're gorgeous.
Okay.
They're outside.
Let me get back to the track here. I'll let you know if he's not gonna take them, then I'll let you know.
Anyway, the point is,
Yeah, we don't
pick up.
have, PLA doesn't have a dumpster of their own. So we depended on the.
And that was actually on city property, and we'd already contacted them to get them to come out to take care of it. And they're usually very slow.
All right.
Okay, the December meeting is actually on the calendar for December the 26th. And that's not a very good time for anybody. So I spoke to Brett a couple of weeks ago, and he suggested that we pick a different date that works out. So I need to know from y'all when a better time would be.
About the 21st.
The 25th. 21st?
The 21st would be on a Thursday. Does that work for everybody?
Oh, okay.
So the Thursday before the weekend of Christmas. Okay.
5:30?
Yes, ma'am. That's what I would propose.
What was it?
Third, December 21st, 5:30.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Just remember, it's Thursday night football.
So we'll have a meeting on Thursday night. Thank you.
And we'll finish on time.
Yep.
You're responsible for the eggnog.
I'll bring that up.
Cookies.
Okay, the accountant that we have been using for quite a few years resigned on November the 17th. We're in search of someone new for our accounting. We have currently been utilizing our CPA firm that has been helping us out and giving us some suggestions of different people. We spoke to one of our contractors today or yesterday, and he readily gave us the name of who he's using. So we are getting some names and looking to secure a new accountant.
So are we going to put that out, just advertise? Okay.
Well, have you asked your accounting firm the question of how couldn't you guys do this since how we got email and stuff now? Just get them to do it?
The CPA firm?
Yeah.
They do our.
Yeah, they do our audit, so they do not.
Oh, they can't do that. Okay.
Yeah, you need somebody that's totally separate, not in the books, working with them and knowledgeable so that it's something
And
that's with them.
it's contracted part-time, right?
Yes, currently, or it was 20 hours a week that we were looking at.
20 hours a month. 20 hours a month.
I mean, 20 hours a month. Sorry.
Since we're looking to kind of revamp, is that sufficient? The 20 hours?
If they work at the pace that we've had in the past,
Okay, it's good.
It's workable.
Okay, cool.
I reported last month that the debit card that was previously used had been closed, that account had. We've also closed the account that was associated to that card. That was an account that we maintained $5,000 in that was utilized throughout the month and was reloaded every month. So we have gone into both of those. Those are now closed. Common area maintenance. This was in the works, so it did not get in your packet.
Oh.
But this is a map that we're putting together that lists all of our common maintenance areas. We maintain 30 miles of bulkhead, 58 canal ends, 7 boat ramps, misspelled over there, 17 medians, 40 cul-de-sacs, which is a total of 122 different areas of common area. So we are very busy with that and making sure that we get on some type of schedule. We're working on an RFP to be able to put out. We're hoping that that's going to be out at the beginning of the year, that all the areas are going to be divided into zones, and someone can bid on zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 3, however they would like to. It depends on what kind of staff arrangements they have to address this. That way, somebody is constantly looking at each of these areas. It is their job to watch it. I'm finding that we have one zone that nobody is, so by the time we go out and look at it, it is beyond what is acceptable. So we've got to get somebody out there quickly to take care of it, and we want to have it where it is systematically being looked at. And if I drive by and see it, I know exactly who's doing zone 2, and I can pick that phone up and ask them, what's going on. It's not meeting the agreement under our contract. So that's the direction that we're moving into with our common areas here.
Super job.
That's awesome.
I want to compliment you on this. This map is long overdue.
Yes.
Long overdue. Congratulations. Nice work.
Well, staff put this together. So
Well, staff,
Lisa and
congratulations.
Sam did a great job on that.
Sam did that.
We'll pass to Sam.
We will. I believe you the whole time. You've been telling me. It's awesome.
Yeah. And we intend to continue on. We wanted to put it on overhead, but as small as those numbers are on a overhead, you would have never been able to see it. We want to put a key with this also that really identifies it by name. But trying to figure out how to get 122 of them on the page is going to be a little bit more difficult to work with.
Maybe able to, our Bulkhead database, a GIS database, you may be able to combine that and then do a color printout, and it will be able to list all the assets that we have. And you can turn off those layers. We may want to look into that.
Okay, and once we get this completed, we'll make sure it's on our website so that
Yeah, it's
everybody
electronic and you
can take a look at it.
Yeah.
You may want to focus the UPS because they divide our island up in zones with the
Into
pods.
regions.
And so they may have some of this done and you might be able to filter it.
Okay, we will.
All right. Thank you.
Certainly. It was brought up that the culvert drainage in Cantata is something that we had looked at before, that it silts up and barnacles grow in it. I looked, and I believe the last time we did that was in 15. And so it's been questioned, do we need to have it looked at again? And I just need guidance from y'all. Would it be better to wait on that until we had done the dredging? Would it bring up a lot of silt or anything, or should we do it?
Well, they don't dredge that area anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so
It's
that
not
is,
in Cantata now. Similar culverts may be different.
okay. Then
Yeah,
we
it's
can get
pretty
somebody
low
in there.
activity zone.
Okay.
I mean, low
Is there
activity
any,
from
is there any
moving material.
detrimental effects of, is there a problem over there now? Some reason, or we just want to keep an eye?
We just want to keep an
Yeah.
eye on it.
That's what we agreed on when we first got it dredged out, that we would do some regular maintenance, and I thought when I suggested this, that we just had a storm with a lot of tidal movements, and a lot of debris that could have gotten pulled in there. which
Or
would stop
washed out.
circulation. Well, or washed out, that's what I said in the thing too, yeah.
Yeah,
Could have helped us, who
when,
knows?
when we did that last time, we almost had a total blockage.
Oh, yeah.
And it had been there
Can
for
we just
years.
send the diver down?
Yes,
That's fine.
exactly.
Let's do it.
Let's
Find
find
out.
out.
It's
Last
just
time.
Yeah, the question,
It's not much.
I was going to do it when Daryl said that, but then not knowing what's going to take place with the dredging and everything, I wanted to ask if we needed to wait or go ahead and do it now. So we have
It doesn't
somebody
cost
do it.
much.
No.
Just do it.
With the meetings that are coming up that we've had in the past month, we're getting a little bit better structured with them. We're posting notices more often. Agendas are being made. So we're going to continue posting these meetings on our Facebook and sending out messages to all the members to let them know that they're welcome to come to these meetings. Most of them have been at the POA office. We have one that meets in the morning, and then the others are basically in the evenings. So just be watching and looking at the website so that we're always looking for input from members, and we want everybody to be able to participate and be a part of the committee. Pretty much my report.
All right, thank you.
I have a suggestion.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, it's gonna have another page.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Okay, is it?
Well, my suggestion is, I think we should move this report right after board comments. Look, all the chairs are empty.
Right.
She said so much good stuff.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Everybody would have heard that.
That's a great idea.
I think
Need to move it
deciding that we just stay to the bigger end myself, but.
Lock the door.
There would be nothing to move it, I mean, just move it and
Yeah.
cover it and it's good.
I think it's a good suggestion, John.
Okay, well,
Even though they're watching on Facebook.
That's fine, I'd rather mirror it face to
Yes,
face.
face to face.
My other information is not till new business, so I'll just hold that.
All right, we'll move to treasurer's report. Look at the annual budget update, balance sheet, and emergency repair fund investment account update. So with respect to our budget, that comes out for 2018.
It usually comes out in November. That's why I checked with you to see if we were having a December meeting.
Yeah.
So I did not bring it to this meeting, and it will be brought forth.
Okay.
I would also, I've got it in my other, to talk to you about a workshop for the budget.
Oh, it's happening new business.
Okay.
Okay.
By the way, that reference to the empty audience was not an insult to anybody that's still here.
No,
I'm glad you're still here. It's just, it'd be nice with all the full chairs to
That's right.
everybody do this.
26 online.
Yeah.
There's more online.
Yeah, that's nice. All right.
We all love here, is there?
26. Okay, so any discussion on the balance sheet or the emergency repair fund investment account? Any discussion? All right.
Question. It seemed, didn't we last month get a check register? Or have we not had those in the past?
I think that showed up last time, but it has not been something that has been in previous months. I'm not sure why it showed up.
Could we have one every month?
Check register?
It's a good idea, just make it practice, yeah.
It might cut
And it
down
would be-
trips to the POA office.
And it would be a lot easier if you did it monthly too. It's only gonna be,
Yeah.
Yeah.
one sheet of paper maybe.
Yeah, no, I don't know if that was a special request or what, because I started looking back at exactly what was there, and it hadn't been there previously, so, but it's easy to add to it.
Yeah.
Thank
It
you.
is.
When you have expenses to date, monthly cut up, it's all, okay, all right, good. Thank you.
Transparency, buddy.
To the board?
To the members.
And
the board that are members.
They don't get a copy of our packet.
They have access to it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do we need to approve the treasurer's report?
It's not required
We
in
just-
Robert's rules, it's just a report to you.
Yeah, is there any other discussion before we move on? Okay. We'll move on to recurring business. If we need to talk about, I think the POA building remodel is still on hold. IT systems update.
I do have something about
Okay.
I have asked Ron Jeffers if he would work with me on putting together an RFP, just going to give me some guidance with his knowledge that he's had in the field. And so I've got to make an appointment with him so that we can get that done. But I would like to make sure that we look at everything. I know there was an assessment done prior, but I would not like to use any of that information and start fresh.
Now what is it we're seeking, we're gonna put out requests for proposals for a new system?
Yes,
or-
all new computers.
Computers?
Look at our programming. We're using a program called TOPS, and we've really not found anything that is better for what we're using, but I can't help but think there's not something out there that would be better. But we just need to look at everything, our security for our systems. We have put some things in place in the last few months, but as an overall, we need to look at the entire system that we have. We have computers that run different versions, so we just need to, mine is notorious when I try to go on TOPS, won't open, and after you've clicked it numerous times, like you're not supposed to, then I can go to Cascade and see all 15 of them, but otherwise it doesn't come up. So we just need to look at getting our systems
Integrated.
yes, and working at their fullest.
Okay.
So I'll be getting back with Mr. Jeffers on that, and then we'll report back.
All right, item C, McFadden letter, Leslie Hess investigation report, discussion and vote.
I think that's best taken up in executive session. So the Hess report for sure.
Wasn't that the plan? I thought that was what we were gonna do.
Okay.
What was the other one? McFadden letter?
Well,
That's
it's
it.
all,
It's all
all
the same.
all the same.
Okay, new business, item 11A.
Credit card authorization. We no longer have a debit card, and we actually need a credit card. I hate to even say that, but we do. We need to buy office supplies from time to time, and currently what we're doing is we're buying it and then getting reimbursed, and that's just not a good thing to do. So, in looking at different possibilities, I went to Frost Bank and talked to them. They have two cards. They have a platinum and then a rewards. We don't need rewards. We don't travel. We're not looking for something like that. We pay it off at the end of the month, so you know that's another consideration. The platinum card, we can put a $5,000 limit or whatever y'all want to put on that. It's at prime plus 5.9, where the other one is at prime at 9.9. So. Where again, we don't need any rewards.
And you're paying it off through the month. It's
I make a motion, we authorize her to get the credit card, that whichever one she thinks is best, move on down there.
I second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign, unanimous.
One small point, Becky. We don't want a credit card, we want a charge card. We don't.
Pay it off monthly, in other words.
Yes.
We don't pay on time.
Right.
Right, no, that's, I stated earlier, this balance is paid monthly.
But that makes it a charge card, not a credit card.
Okay.
They don't make
Duly
it.
noted.
All right, so new business, item 11B, aerator authorization and possible approval.
All right, last month we talked about finding an electrician to go out and wire all of the aerators.
Russ Maget.
Russ Maget, I was speaking to him in the office. He does our water quality control. He works on our aerators before the storm. If something happens to one of them, he replaces it for us, or he makes alterations.
He puts them all in.
He installed all of them that are there. And when he was in my office, he was saying, you don't need to hire somebody, I will do this for nothing. So I just need, yeah.
So I make a motion,
Yeah.
we go with that bid.
Yeah, and there were several different agencies that we could look at. I say that we go back with the same agency that we purchased all the other ones
Because they
in
lasted.
Terre, because they lasted, they.
We talked about that.
Yeah.
Right, and that's really kind of what we settled on last time, but we had wanted the electrician to come in. So I just need approval to be able to call them and get the equipment so that we can put it in.
Is that $9,000?
Correct. $9,003.90.
Okay, so this, we have a motion to authorize the approval of the purchase of the aerators.
And a modification of the.
No, we didn't go for that. Yeah, he's gonna analyze it.
Okay, so
You're fine right now.
And the modification of the.
let's do this separately, because I do have some discussion on the electrical. So the aerator purchase, do we have a motion?
She made it, no, I seconded it.
All right, any discussion on that topic? All right, I'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. It's unanimous. So the electrical portion of it, Russ Maget is going to install the electrical.
No.
No.
Is that?
He's going to install the aerators into the boxes.
The same way
Plug
they
them
are.
in the same way they
And
are.
they basically plug in,
Yes.
like we've talked about. But what about the electrical?
That's what needs to be done, is make it up to code.
Yeah.
Not,
Yeah.
go look at the one I have.
Yeah, so that's what we talked about previously, from a person's home to the box.
Right.
There's a conduit, conductors, there's all that hooks up to the home and all that. He's not doing that, right? That's a licensed electrician.
Right, because that's water and electricity.
Right.
So,
licensed electrician.
do we have a licensed
These are gonna
electrician?
be plug and play, where he just takes it and
Yeah,
do
I got
it. The
that.
other two,
I got that, but there's a number of installations that need to be brought up to code and make sure that for
What
the
is
sake
it?
of, I mean, not an electrician,
We
what
want
I'm saying
someone that
is,
couldn't get it up to code to do that. But what is yours? Is it, you know, residential road map?
Romex run across the bottom of the deal and plug it in. Yeah.
so Carter, what I'm suggesting is if we have our equipment out there and we've got a homeowner that we're paying, you know, Daryl a certain number of dollars per month, and it's not up to code, and he gets electrocuted, these two guys, or someone like a set of attorneys would be all over us. So
That'd be
I'm
nice.
asking that we need a licensed electrician to go assess that and
okay.
reinstall it.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll get that, we'll go ahead and order the aerators, but we'll get somebody out to look at each of
Yes.
the boxes and make sure they're okay and what they need to do before they install.
But we don't want to go down the separate meter road. We talked about that last.
Super expensive.
Yeah, very expensive.
It's just
Okay.
easier for them.
All right, I had no idea they were in that bad shape. I thought that, you know, big rubber, whatever was connected, surely they come with lines, the lights, the pumps.
Yes.
It's gotta be the code to.
It's,
Well, the enclosure and all the pump and everything. That's the thing, I don't know.
it's the power supply where you plug it in to the home. And that's where we need to make sure it's under.
You're not a double
according
lead.
to code.
No, I'm a chemical engineer, not an electrical engineer.
I will get somebody out there
All right,
next
I'm talking
week.
molecules, let's go.
Okay.
But I just have an electrician or
Yeah.
Bill to look at them all
We'll
and
give him
say,
the address and everything and have him look at all of them.
and the bid is.
There were 10 of them.
There was a couple of before.
Yes.
Are
and
there a
one of
couple
them's
that
still
don't
working.
need that?
I
Or?
don't know, they all need to be looked at, I think. Everyone that we own needs to
Let's
be.
just look at all of them. Everyone give a report back.
All right, I agree. I remember that conversation.
All right. The item 11C, PIPOA office replacement roof damage from
Yes.
Hurricane Harvey.
We have received 3 different bids that y'all have copies of. And they range from 7,800 to, I believe, 84. Pinnacle Roofing, Wolf Construction, and Blue Sky Roofing. And Wolf came in at the lowest bid, is a local,
That was my next thing.
is local. And with that, we also have, about $1,000 on the gate and fence at the POA that is also, we received a check to have that and the roof removed.
So have you done an apples to apples comparison? The bids are
They're
based
all
on the
pretty
same.
based the same. Now, one of the things that we're thinking of is, because it came in at 7,800, about talking to them and upgrading to the next level of shingle, since it is under.
Great idea.
You want to put your shingles on here.
Yeah, that's
We want
would be my
protection.
suggestion is upgrade the shingle. And maybe even something architectural, look,
This says 30-year dimensional.
They're all 30, all 3 were 30 years.
Do we have, gutters and stuff?
We don't have gutters.
We do have gutters.
Oh, sorry, I didn't think we did.
Is they staying up?
We have gutters on 2 sides, we don't have them all the way around the building.
Okay.
We have them in the front and we have them on our side.
Because at one point, the water was going off the roof and seeping into the building.
What's that, I'm sorry?
At one point in time.
That's why we have gutters,
Yeah.
because
That
the
rear
leak that was
corner.
back
That
in
didn't fix
that
back in
corner.
the corner.
And that hasn't happened since we put the gutter
Good.
system up.
How old are the shingles that's out there now?
They're old.
It was more that the wind had bent them, and so it compromises it because there's like a crease in it where the wind bent it up.
2002 is what I read.
Did we get an insurance settlement on the roof?
Yes, we did.
Oh, what did we get?
Yeah. I wanna say 98.
Yeah.
So we're covered.
Are they gonna do ridge vents on that? A lot of them, I got 3 bids on my house, and every one of them put ridge vents instead of the turtle shells, what do you call them?
Oh, what, it
So
must
what I'm
be
getting
easier.
at, it is, and it's supposed to be better ventilation, but make sure, I learned the hard way, when they cut those ridge vents, all that sawdust falls down into your attic and covers everything.
Trust me about that.
Make sure they put something to catch all that.
Okay.
Or you'll have it all
Is that,
over.
does the bid say ridge vent?
No, it does not.
Those turtles are kind of funky looking. But in a wind,
But our roof
in
is
a
not.
wind and water like we had in that storm, was there any, I wonder if we, any reports on ridge vents, water going?
Oh, versus, yeah.
You know, in the
In my
highway.
house.
From a different direction. You got it? No?
Yeah, we manage.
So it doesn't say that, huh?
Does not say ridge vent on it.
Well, the ones you ask is, yeah.
We were gonna try and get a, so can we put that, once you get that information, can we
We can
just
still
put
put
it
it up
up
at the highest point, mainly for
Get in
ventilation.
line.
You want me to add the ridge vent to it, find out what the cost is, and email it, and then we can move forward with
And
it?
upgrade the shingle.
Okay.
Well, they may not recommend it, I'm just saying.
Well, we
This-
want it.
Like
It
Lisa
might be a
said,
weird
they don't have
angle.
ridges like me, they
They
have.
might not like the angle.
That's a weird shape.
It is.
All right, then
She's
I
worth
will get that
asking.
information, I should be able to get it tomorrow, and then get
Yeah.
that back out to you.
Cause you're gonna be in line a while.
Well, actually, with Wolf, they would be able to start it fairly quickly.
Really?
All right.
Yeah.
So
They
you
came
have,
that day.
you have direction to move forward.
Yes.
And then we can give her conditional approval, call the vote right now. I mean, it's.
Yeah, as long as it's
Yeah, not to
within.
exceed.
Yeah, let's do that. So, have a motion?
I make a motion to give her conditional approval, as long as it's reasonable and
Within 5%.
Yeah, I'll second that one.
All right. Any discussion? I'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Unanimous. All right, item 11D, deck replacement, homeowner request for reimbursement, possible approval.
Okay, the next thing we have in your packet is from ProBuild. What has happened is we had the cleanup in the canals where the people on the barges were going up and down. Everyone was told if you have something that you do not want them to take, move it to the side, designate it so that they don't take it. Well, a homeowner reported that they had some lumber that they were going to reuse for their dock that was removed. They didn't see who it was, they're just assuming that it was the people out in the canals, and they are replacing, it's an evergreen, which is a composite type material, it is not a wood.
Right.
The plastic stuff?
Yes, sir.
That's expensive.
Yes, it is. What they're asking of us is they would like us to pay for $1,792.62 to replace the missing boards. Spoke to the contractor, they say they did not take it. So I just need to be able to kind of close this out and let the owner know what our position is.
Well,
I'll open this up for discussion. I have my opinion, but.
I certainly have mine. I understand there's even some questions about whether the deck is originally composite or not. And did they undo deposit stack composite on the property and somebody stole that, or was it wood there that was stolen?
I've asked the owner and spoke to her again today, and she says that the
Not
company,
that.
the Texas Docks and Decks that they contacted, took a piece of wood back and tried to match it the best they could to equal, and this is the,
Best thing you
yes. So she didn't say that it was not the evergreen, but that it was close.
On the previous question, if the homeowner thinks the stuff was taken and the contractor says he didn't take it, why don't we compromise with them and offer them a 50% settlement?
Because we don't have any liability.
Yeah, but Jack, I'm not in favor of doing any reimbursement. We don't know who took it, and why would the POA? That's opening Pandora's box to me.
Okay.
I mean, I think what we should do is maybe in this Rodino report, we have a suggestion here now of how do we know what stuff we're going to pick up. You know, if there was a question of tying a white ribbon or whatever it was, and you know, how do we need to know a better system of how we're going to do that in the future, because if we don't know, if they didn't see who took it, we have a contractor that said they didn't take it. I mean, at $1,800, you could file charges on somebody. That's a felony, right? It's felony theft. If they filed it on somebody, they couldn't prove it, and it wouldn't go anywhere. So why would we be held responsible for that $1,800?
Goodwill, that's what I was.
Yeah, it's a reasonable suggestion. If we wanted to get snotty about it, surely some neighbor has cameras.
Well,
I mean, I don't want to get involved in that, but we didn't steal it. We can't go to these people and say, oh, well, there was this little boo-boo.
It's just, it opens it up for a request from a homeowner, you know.
Sorry.
There was some confusion though around where the rubble was to be and where the save boards were to be. I think one statement we put out said do this, and then when you called in, Lisa, they had told them to do something else based on past history. So there was some confusion over all of this, but it still doesn't define who took the materials.
Well, yeah, and there's also a deeper, we've talked about this also, having contractors. I saw some posts and emails that went around and said, hey, who are these guys taking stuff? I mean, they look like they're stealing. We need to have contractors that have visible t-shirts or uniforms or something that has identifying
or flag or
something, and not just a boat that looks like somebody's stealing.
But that white flag thing, I can't remember exactly how it happened, but we don't need to be doing that. We don't pick up docks off of people's docks. We can't do that. And so don't put a white flag.
Our contract is specifically just to pick up floating.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but there was other stuff picked up.
And remember, we had a specific deal. We didn't want these contractors that were working for us on an hourly to be going out there and working for people.
That's right. We got a prohibition on
right.
any other work for this hour.
Yeah, but there is some film of one particular barge taking dock wood off of a dock.
Yeah, it just needs to be tighter controls. I think we could do a better job of that.
And they're identifying.
Trying to do it expeditiously. You know, we were all taken by surprise.
Yeah. So let's don't do white.
So I think that's one of the lessons learned, and we just have to make sure that we document it and get better at it. And hopefully never have to do it again.
But for the most part, that the process of removing the floating debris went off like we were a bunch of muffins, I think. Don't you? I mean, I think we look good.
Yeah. You meant at the good way.
Yeah, good muffins, buttered muffins.
Yeah.
All right, so
yeah.
No, I heard more thank yous, and I didn't hear any
No,
So back to
This is
what
one-
we're
well,
going to ask for
one animal.
request for reimbursement. What's the board's opinion?
I make a motion, we deny the reimbursement without any further information or.
Any, do I have a second?
We need proof.
Would it help to do more investigation?
Yeah, but
Is there more that could be done?
it's not our obligation to do investigation. If they want to present more evidence.
So is there a second to Carter's motion?
Oh, there's still discussion.
Well,
What kind
you
of
have to send it
investigation?
before they get
The only thing that I would note would be to seek any camera footage.
The problem is we're not liable for it anyway, no matter what.
Did you have a personal conversation with the homeowner?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you think of their pitch? Were they sounding legitimate? Were they sounding?
Rejects missing, that's pretty legit.
Yeah, it's missing. I mean, I didn't get the feel that they were
Maybe the
making
city
that up.
picked it up.
But, she,
They were on a point too.
yeah, they're on a point that's open to anybody there. So, I didn't get a vibe or anything that she was fabricating anything.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
No,
So-
she was sincere about it. She'd been talking to Maybeth before I
Somebody
came out
picked
about
the
it.
stuff up.
Somebody
That's no
picked it
question.
up.
Somebody picked it
It was on an empty lot.
So, do you think that you can smooth this over with her and make sense to her why the board doesn't think we can be spending public's money this way?
I'll do my best.
But do you think you can? Or is this gonna blow up into a big monster? Okay.
Carter, your motion
They
hasn't
had
been
been-
seconded yet.
I'm working on it.
They've been very, I mean, it's not an angry conversation when we talk, but I think they're gonna be concerned. I mean,
Yeah. But
Well, they can always appeal our decision and come back to the whole board in person.
the concept though is why would the POA be responsible for it?
they feel that it was our people who removed it,
Well,
As in the barge people.
our contractors.
what's even deeper, the LLC concept.
Yeah, and I mean, and we have retained independent contractors to do this work, but it's, you know, we're talking about a $1,800 it could be a $900 resolution or something. I mean, the horse is dead one way or the other.
It could be a 900,
Could be.
but it opens Pandora's box.
Yeah,
It
but
could be-
who else is gonna come next?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Can of worms.
Oh, Pandora, where is she?
I think in the scheme of things, somebody having to throw $1,800 at replacing their deck, I mean, you should see my neighbor's deck, like 80,000.
Holy wow.
Okay, so we have a second to Carter's motion.
Come on, Jeremy.
Well,
No, you're
Either that or
saying
guys.
we're not giving them anything.
That's right, because it's not our obligation to do so. It's not in our bylaws or articles of incorporation, which is what we're directed to drive by. That's what I'm saying. It's not our obligation.
Okay, is there a second?
Really?
I'll second it. And if they want to appeal, they can come to the 7th.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? I'll call them. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
I've got 2 votes, remember?
All right, so once again, show of hands. This time, all in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. So we got,
I don't know, I gotta hear
4, 3.
That's my problem. I need to do more.
Well, I left it open for that. My motion said unless more information comes on.
That was 3-3.
She's not.
I have 2 hands.
Oh, was that? Okay.
We take
Okay,
no
so is it-
responsibility, but we're willing to help.
Okay, so is there?
That's a lovely way to say it. Not that I say it.
Is there another motion that you guys would want to make? Another avenue
Well,
for?
what was the count, Brent? Because you're the
It's
typewriter.
4 to 3.
3.
All right, 4 in favor, saying no.
Yep.
All right, so
And it passed.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay.
And if they come back and she can convince us all again, well,
I think that's always open.
yeah,
Okay.
it's always up.
What were the three no's? Oh, you said no. Okay.
Simpler and no.
Jack was on the fence, I can tell.
All right, 11E, we'll move forward. Discussion regarding the arch and 2017 bylaw changes and consideration of additional 2017 bylaw changes to be voted on at December board meeting. So, John, would you, I think it would probably be best if you give a summary of, are you prepared to do a summary of the, I think we've heard Mr. McFadden's presentation on the arch. I've seen some, you guys have probably seen the electronic information, the flyers that have gone around.
It's all here.
So I think we've got the background on the arch. Can we talk about the bylaw changes that we have coming up? The discussion of the vote, just kind of a summary from you.
Sure. The proposals by Arch are the same proposals that I presented to you last month from Carl Rubenstein is his proposed settlement of the issue. The two propositions, and what they're seeking to do is stated under the state law in our bylaws, if they get 10% of the members calling for an item to be put on the agenda, we will either have a special meeting of the membership or add it to the annual meeting if it comes in time to consider these two proposed bylaws amendments. The two proposed bylaws amendments, well, number one, in the amendments in 2013, the board did not take away any rights of the membership to amend the bylaws. The rights of the membership to amend the bylaws stayed in the bylaws. They provided there was no right taken away. The only thing added was what the Texas legislature had added in 1994, and that was a provision providing that a board of directors may amend the bylaws. The two propositions are, Proposition 1 is stating that the PIPOA board is hereby forbidden to amend or repeal this bylaw or to adopt any other PIPOA bylaw to the same or similar effect. The PIPOA bylaws may not be amended, repealed, adopted, or otherwise affected by the POA board, all such power being herewith reserved unto the voting members and only the voting members. And keep in mind, as we've discussed in the past, the state law says two things in Business and Commerce Code, Chapter 22. It says, number one, an organization can have any bylaws that are consistent with the state law. And then the immediate next sentence says the board of directors may amend the bylaws of an organization. Nowhere in that section does it say that law only applies if the bylaws are silent. There are other sections in the Business Organizations Code where that is expressly provided. It says if the bylaws are silent, this rule applies, otherwise it's whatever the bylaws say. That language does not appear in this particular section. The immediate, and so one problem, and I reached out to Carl and I asked him, how do you respond to a statement that your proposed bylaw directly contradicts state law by saying that the POA board has no authority to amend the bylaws, when state law says an organization can adopt bylaws as long as they are consistent with state law, and state law says the board may amend the bylaws. How do you say that the board may not amend bylaws is consistent with state law that says the board may amend bylaws? And I did not get a response to that other than I was just trying to cause trouble, and why didn't I let the people decide? And this whole thing about letting the people decide is a great argument, no question about that, but your obligation as fiduciaries, and we talk about fiduciaries a whole lot in this discussion, is what is legally authorized, and you want to subject the POA to a lawsuit that this proposed bylaw amendment actually violates state law. And I was actually seeking help from Carl and from his attorney when I sent Carl an email and sent his attorney a letter saying, please show me where in the law does it say that section 22 on bylaws only applies if the bylaws are silent. And how can you propose a bylaw that specifically contradicts what state law provides? And I have not received any response. And so that's my problem with proposition number 1. With proposition number 2, it relates to the issue of removal of a director, and that this has been part of the bylaws since the beginning. It has nothing to do with me. It's been there since before 1994, since forever.
It's also state law.
And no, it says a board. It's not in state law. It provides that by a unanimous vote of the board, you can remove any member with or without cause. And as we discussed last month, this is how boards stay out of lawsuits. If your only right is to remove somebody if they committed a crime, then you have to prove that they committed the crime. If you cannot prove that they committed a crime, then you can't remove them. And it's and basically that,
and I believe
in lawyer will say that talks about getting in, that buys a lawsuit. Whenever your only way to remove somebody is for cause, is you're going to have a lawsuit at the end of the day, unless you have some settlement resolution, typically a payment of money or whatever, in order to resolve the issue. And so every nonprofit that I've had any experience with has provision for a without cause removal, either by a 2/3 vote or a 3/4 vote. It's not to be taken lightly, but it's a serious matter. But where, in this case, the POA provision says unanimous, it's got to be every single person, all 6 of you, with the exception of the 1 person, to remove it for cause. It's not been used frivolously. I mean, the only time in the history that we could determine it's ever been used with POA is when you had a board member who didn't show up to board meetings, but he wouldn't resign, or she would resign. I forget if it was an him or her. And so your only recourse was to remove the person so you could appoint a 7th person who would come to board meetings. Because that's not a crime, by the way, to not come to board meetings. And so under the proposal, that would not be good cause to remove somebody from the board. Now, in the Carl did modify this proposal based upon my argument about the time, and so he says cause is here to find is conviction of a felony or misdemeanor involving moral turpitude or the failure to attend more than 4 board meetings, absent illness or force majeure.
Is that within a year?
Well,
or is this?
Well, it doesn't say 4 consecutive. It doesn't say 4 consecutive board meetings. It just says 4 board meetings. So it could be 4 board meetings during your 3-year term, which could be pretty harsh.
Should say that.
But again, when you say absent illness or force majeure is open. Well, circumstances beyond my control. I teach out at the university. I didn't make the exam the other night because my dog died. And I'm sorry about the loss of your dog, but I've heard every excuse under the sun is what was something beyond their control. But again, there are, and this is the whole problem with trying to write in a good cause. I made one comment about the only time it's been used was because somebody didn't come to 4 board meetings consecutively, and so they removed the person. That's one issue. But we can't talk about another issue that we don't even know, where somebody you think might be getting kickbacks or some corruption, but you cannot prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. This requires conviction of a felony.
Which could take years.
Which can take years, and could drag the appeal way through the mud, you know, in the 2 years while the criminal trial is going on. And you know, do you want to do that? It's a pretty high burden for everybody on the board to say that person should leave. But nevertheless, that's the proposal. So that's the concern about the two. The request presented by Carl last month was that if we put these two on the ballot for the annual meeting, it'll abide by whatever the people decide, and we, you know, all this thing is moot, which, but nevertheless, that's a proposal, and that's what Arch is doing. Are those two proposals with the one modification, and then we've added failure to attend 4 board meetings absent illness or force majeure to the removal of the board member.
Let's kind of cut to the chase a little bit.
Sure.
Is it a violation of state law for the members to only be the ones to change the bylaws?
Well, it's like explained. State law says in subparagraph B, an entity can have any bylaws in conformity with or state law, any bylaw provisions in conformity with requirements of state law. In subsection C, it says the board of directors may amend the bylaws. So to me, it's hard to justify the board may not amend the bylaws. In that section, it says there can, you know, the members can enact a specific bylaw and say the board can amend this particular bylaw. And in that case, you could have all sorts of things about elections or perhaps removal of board members or hundreds of other provisions in bylaws. And if the members enacted it, they can specifically say, board, you can't touch this. And that's specifically provided in the law. But that doesn't give the members the right to enact an illegal amendment that only white males can be elected to your board. I mean, we could let the people decide that, but that would be wrong. You know, that would be a problem.
But is it a violation of Texas law to have the members in control of the bylaws, changing them, not changing them? Whether they do a good job or bad isn't the question.
No, the state law says the board may amend bylaws. In our bylaws, we also say the members may amend the bylaws. So we allow both the board and the members to amend the bylaws, but state law specifically says the board may amend the bylaws, so it would be a violation of state laws for the members to say the board can't amend any bylaws.
So that's the key.
State law says the members can enact a bylaw and provide that the board can't amend or repeal that bylaw. That is specifically provided in the law. But that's stated right after it says the board generally may amend bylaws.
So, right.
And so we could have a section that says, for example, a board member can only be removed for good cause. And the board may not amend this bylaw or repeal it. And that would be fine. That doesn't violate any state law. That's okay. That would be the member's prerogative to enact that bylaw and to specifically provide that the board cannot amend that bylaw. That's set out specifically in the code.
So what you're saying, the members, if they get the 10%, can make a specific bylaw that the board cannot amend.
Correct. Yes.
So the whole,
as long as it's in conformity with the law.
Yeah, assuming it's.
It has to be in conformity with the law.
So the truth is the Arch thing is enforceable from the get-go.
Well, no, the Arch thing, if they get 10% of the voters, the members,
well,
the request will have a meeting, it will be on the ballot.
Yeah.
And
if the ballot's successful.
And the way ballot propositions go with the courts is, even though you might think a ballot proposition is illegal, like for example, only males can be on board or something like that, you cannot go to court before the vote to stop it. You have to wait for the people to decide. And then once the people decide, then if there is something that the people have done that's illegal, then you go to court about that. Okay? And so that would be the process that would be followed. And I've been through that for 35 years with city and government that I represent.
John, so there's a possibility that if the thing went to vote and then it was in fact illegal, it could cost the POA extra legal fees and money for our members.
If the board chooses to fight it, or if a member chooses to
anybody
challenge.
And what about the removal of the board member one? Isn't that also not legally enforceable?
Oh, that's perfect. That's legally enforceable.
You can do
that's
that.
That's just bilateral. That's what I would consider unwise, and that it's too restricted and buys you a lawsuit. But no, your membership clearly could enact Proposition 2 that doesn't violate.
Which was discussed about if you have to remove somebody for cause and you can't prove that they've committed a crime, then they can sue the POA.
Under the proposal, somebody could only be removed if they were found guilty.
Yes.
If they were convicted of a felony or misdemeanor involving
missed 4 meetings.
or missed 4 meetings, which I think it was intended to mean 4 consecutive meetings, but because 4 meetings in a 3-year term is kind of harsh.
I thought it was 4 meetings in a year.
Well, it just said
that was my.
It just said 4 board meetings, absent, illness, force majeure. But in any event, there's nothing illegal about that standard. It's just that. I mean, we have a local judge who was charged with a crime, and he was suspended without pay pending what's going on. He cannot act as a judge. You have no authority to do that. You would have to wait until the criminal trial was over, and if there was a conviction, then you could remove somebody. But if there was not a conviction, you could not.
What about where in our rules we suggest that we operate under Robert's Rules of Order, and that is in Robert's Rules of Order? We have to change that.
Well, the bylaws, no, that provision just says, except as otherwise provided herein, you conduct your proceedings according to Robert's Rules of Order. And so when your bylaws provide for specific things, you follow your bylaws.
Okay. They take
precedent. Your bylaws take precedent over that. And so, let me just make it very clear, legally there is nothing wrong with Proposition 2. I just think it's very, very restrictive in what the board can do. And quite frankly, you could go another 30 years without even having a consideration as to why Proposition 2 makes any difference in things. And by the same token, you could go 20 years without caring whether or not the board can amend the bylaws or not, because they're not issues. Now, we do have an issue, and the next issue is we hired a person that we want to call the executive director, and our bylaws approve call that person an executive coordinator. And so generally, it's our recommendation, you could fix that, and it's a board. Plus, we've been notified that there was a mistake in the bylaws that are posted on our website and our bylaws that we filed a record in the bylaws we've been handing out to people. That's an error. We had an erroneous set of bylaws, and there's only so long that you can stand around and stand at the car wreck, and say, yeah, that's a wreck, there's an error.
And we've been doing that for 4 months, 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2 months now, but we need to put on our website what the real bylaws are, and the real bylaws approved by majority vote of the board have the executive coordinator provision in there. And those are the legal bylaws of this organization. And so that's the next item, is to do something about, do you want to do something about the executive director? Or I guess another option is we just kick the can down the road and wait and see, but what more are we trying to wait and see?
Does this mean filing them? You need a motion to file?
No, we don't. We need a motion to amend the bylaws to
Yes.
provide that executive coordinator is now executive director.
The problem I see, John, and I could have sworn that thing took, you have the investigation results right here in front of you. Carter,
Oh, yeah,
right
yeah.
there. So what was the date of that letter? What was the date of the McFadden letter?
It was
Oh.
October 10 or 12, something like that.
Almost,
Very front page.
Very
first one.
Let's see. The original letter is dated October 3.
October 3?
3, yeah.
But the actual bylaws that were incorrect happened in April.
At the end of April, they were filed and recorded at the end of April.
So between April and today, we're still operating with an incorrect.
Well, our operations have never changed one iota.
No. What he's saying is we have
We've been
incorrect.
passing out the wrong bylaws.
Yes.
And what was suggested?
So my recommendation is we correct it.
And John, what could have been the damage or whatever of the, what was the difference between the bylaws? I mean, what are we really talking about here?
We left out the paragraph on the executive coordinator
Right.
and the references to the executive coordinator
Right.
and other provisions
Super
of Article
important.
3.
Yeah.
And we had lived without mentioning the executive coordinator in the bylaws, until 2013. And from 2013 until 2017, the bylaws on the website and the bylaws handed to everyone as part of their management certificate had the executive coordinator in it. They were the correct bylaws that were provided.
And that's it.
So the question is, do we want to call the person the executive director?
I don't see how we can, until we correct the bylaws that are filed, I don't see how we can change what we have. So we're 2 months down the road. We should have, when the issue was brought up, we should have refiled the paperwork to do the correct bylaws, file the correct bylaws, and then we can correct those. But now we're going to change. I know.
Let's get it over with.
Time has gone by, but it's still time. And this whole issue about the recordation of the bylaws is the court case that was presented, Stork versus Tres Lagos Property Owners Association, specifically holds that bylaws of a property owner association do not constitute a dedicatory instrument for the purposes of Texas Property Code 202.001.
Well,
and he goes on to state, let me be thorough about this. He says, let me finish just a second because I can explain your point on that. The court specifically says we do not believe the definition of dedicatory instrument in the property code was intended to establish a definitive list of documents to be considered the dedicatory instruments. Instead, we interpret the phrase, quote, subjecting property to, close quote, is modifying restrictions or some similar limitations, which is what I explained to you last week. The document has to specifically restrict some property because after all, Chapter 202 is entitled Enforcement of Restrictive Covenants. That's the whole purpose of it, is enforcing restrictive covenants. Now it's true, Marvin, that in this court case, they did find that the bylaws in question included a procedure on voting that conflicted, well, they concluded several things. Number one, the bylaws were specifically referenced in the restrictive covenants filed of record. They said that these properties are subject to a property owners association formed by articles of incorporation and bylaws that were specifically referenced in the protective covenants filed of record. And so the court said, as a result, the bylaws in their provision on how directors are elected are a dedicatory instrument by reference, incorporated by reference. However, our protective covenants were prepared and adopted 5 years before the POA even came into existence. And our POA is not mentioned in our protective covenants anywhere, nor are the bylaws, nor are the articles of incorporation. It just simply says there is a trustee that initially was controlled by Bylaw Investment Corporation, and that trustee can transfer the common areas to a nonprofit organization as it sometimes seems fit. And in 19 something, we have a deed from the trustee to Bylaw Investment Corp trustee to the Bylaws Property Owner Association, which was formed at that time. So our bylaws are not mentioned anywhere in any recorded document.
They're in the articles of incorporation.
But that's not a dedicatory instrument. In this case, both the articles and the bylaws.
That's subject to debate.
No,
Oh, yes, it is.
All right. No, the articles of incorporation are not mentioned in the protective covenants. They are not. It's not debatable. It wasn't even formed.
I'm not going to argue because I'm not here to give legal advice. That's not my job.
But just in response to your question, that this case says bylaws are a dedicatory instrument. This case specifically says bylaws are not.
Well,
nor does it matter to
incorporated by reference, which means they would be a dedicatory.
No.
Yeah, it was, but in our case,
That's not what
in our
this
case,
is about. It's not a lawyer's job.
That's
our
our
lawyer.
Once you incorporate something into the document, then it automatically becomes part of that document, and it's a dedicatory instrument, which is exactly what the case says.
Right, but our protective covenants have no reference to the POA, nor its articles of incorporation, nor its bylaws, which is what this court case found specifically happened with Tres Lagos, is in the protective covenants it said there shall be a POA with articles of incorporation and bylaws, which are hereby incorporated by reference. That's incorporated by reference.
It is the definition
Our
of
protective
That's my position.
Okay. But again, this board has its authority to amend bylaws, not by virtue of whether some bylaws have been recorded with the county clerk. And by virtue of state law.
Guys, here's what I think we ought to do. I think we ought to do what we should have done 2 months ago when the issue was brought up. We need to clean the bylaws up, file the right bylaws down in the courts, okay? And then we can figure out how to deal with this issue, the title. Until we get those cleaned up down there, how do we vote on anything? You can't. The wrong ones are down there. So what are we gonna vote on?
Replace them. All you gotta do is add new ones, right?
No, we'll file an issue. Whenever you file the new bylaws, they replace the previous ones filed.
What's the big deal?
That's
Change
the reality
direction.
of
We're
land
down the
bylaws.
road. Why don't we do it?
But
that's what
in that case, my recommendation is do part B of the recommendation, and that is confirming that the official bylaws of this organization are the 2013 bylaws approved by the board on September 24, 2013, with the single amendment approved on April 1st, 2017.
That's exactly
voted.
Yes.
And if we have vote for the record, that's what we can file and approve. Now, the only reason I put the other item in there is because it seemed like somewhat of a no-brainer that you want to change the executive coordinator to the executive director. If you're going to spend, $50 or $100 to file the bylaws of record,
do it.
We can do it. We can make that change as well, so you don't have to do it again.
Is there
Does
some?
that make sense to everybody?
No, except for just one more. Is there some legal tricky, you know what I mean? What I'm saying about the directorship compared to the executive coordinator.
What's a director versus a coordinator? I don't get
What
big
what's
deal.
that?
Well, it's the word.
It's the word?
It's just a word.
A word.
It's just a word.
Potato or word. No, you could put
No,
director
potato and flower are the same
slash
word.
coordinator.
They're pronounced differently. Executive director starts with a D, and coordinator starts with a C.
Or you can even say director slash
But
coordinator.
is there a
period.
difference?
No, it's just
We'll
whatever.
just change it anyway.
We could.
Why would you fix it right?
It kind of depends on what Becky was offered for her job.
Executive director.
Once again,
Executive
Coordinator, was it a
It's
director?
very clear. It's executive.
She'll sign in.
It's very
Go on,
clear.
Ezra.
It was executive director.
That's crazy.
It's in the job description, it's in the job offer. It's in their title, it's on their business cards, it's executive director.
Change it, fix it. I'll make a motion, we fix it and file it.
We have to wait till the next meeting.
What?
So, who said
Changing the bylaws, you gotta wait, at least 30 days or a meeting, that's.
What provision requires that?
Yeah, what are you passing laws in on?
It has to be disclosed in your agenda specifically.
It seems to me that even well, I don't remember, I'm too tired to remember. I would just as soon give it the next meeting, so we could have time.
We kicked the can down the road on this board. I mean, that's a 2-month-old investigation. We waited another one.
I say we
You
do
know,
it too. There's a motion.
In the other, I mean, we've got other bylaw amendments that we were considering here tonight as well. I'm fine with voting on tonight or voting on the next month, however you guys want to do, but we need to get some work done on this board and this POA.
I made a motion.
We've got too many distractions, we've got too many games going on, we've got lawyer speak going on.
Well, if you simply want to do part G, yeah, the ratifying, confirming the bylaws amended in 2013 are the bylaws. That's actually not amending anything. That's just confirming that what this board did in 2013 are the bylaws and what you did in official action in 2017 are the bylaws.
All right, we have.
That's not an amendment at all.
Item
That's
11
just
G, we
confirming.
have a motion?
We did.
All right, do we have a second?
Yes.
I'll second
Any discussion, further
What
discussion?
is the motion?
Item 11G is ratifying and confirming the bylaws as amended in 2013.
Well, it's
It
not
actually-
modified in that we're going to delete the last phrase after April 1, 2017. So it'll say ratifying and confirming the bylaws as amended in 2013 in order to conform the bylaws to the requirements of state law and current practices, with the sole changes being the amendment to 201 on Flowery vote adopted April 1, 2017, period, because you're not doing F, which was amending the executive director position tonight.
Why can't we
But
just
that's simply,
amend that?
that's simply just stating the record fact. And
It is
those
what
are
it
the only
is.
bylaws. And so
We don't want a
we
mistake.
will adopt those
bylaw
bylaws,
set
we'll
out.
put them on the website,
Fix
they'll
it.
be filed in record, and at least we will be in compliance
Yes.
with what we're telling people are the
Yes.
bylaws.
But John, we don't want a mistaken set out there filed of record. Let's just fix it and file the right one.
That's what this does. That's what this does.
Okay, then just do
So
it.
back to Marvin's question, is what are we voting on? What is?
Well, I just read it.
Yeah, you read it.
It's G with the period after April 1, 2017.
Okay.
Unless you want to fix the executive director.
We do.
I would
We do.
consider
We ain't
that a-
afraid.
But I think we
Do
need
what
to
we
get
can
this,
do.
we need to get this done first. And then we'll-
Why can't we do it at the same time?
Well, we're going to do it at the same time, but we got to do two different motions.
One step, okay.
Oh.
So that's step number one.
Okay, John, could you clearly repeat what I think your motion was?
Yeah.
Well, and here, just to be on the same page, I'm solely reading item G as it was disclosed in the agenda, ratifying, confirming the bylaws as amended in 2013 in order to conform the bylaws with the requirements of state law and current practices, with the sole change, we'll make that singular, being the amendment to section 2.01 on plurality vote adopted April 1, 2017. There was no other meeting, there were no other changes done other than that one change. And that's all we're doing, and based upon that, we will correct the website, we'll correct the recording with the county clerk, and people will have an accurate set of bylaws.
So.
Did you get that down?
So the first part,
Okay,
basically, in a nutshell, is
So here's where the confusion is. Here's where
Where's
the
the confusion?
I just figured it out.
Oh,
I'm looking at an
plurality.
agenda
That's gonna take a little
that
bit.
is,
I think we added the rest of the.
yeah, so I'm looking at an agenda that has a very short 11G.
Okay, well, that was the first one mailed out. The second one mailed out.
So mine says
was
ratifying and confirming the bylaws as amended in 2013, nothing else.
Okay.
What Becky says is what you just read.
Right.
So, what do you guys have?
I have just the short version, but I
The
have.
short one was sent out with your agenda packets. The longer version was emailed.
And that's
shortly
what
thereafter.
you
So it's
redid.
very clear, it's in the board agenda, what you just read.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's
Your
what was,
motion.
that was what was part of the
That
email
was what
blast
was
to
on
everybody.
this. That was what was the
Okay.
action of
So we
Let's
have,
call the question.
So the only thing it says under G is ratifying and confirming the bylaws as amended in 2013, so you're adding to
No.
that.
so we have,
When we just explained, Margaret,
This is the one sent out, this is the
That's
second
the
one
one that
that
I
I
sent
sent.
out.
that was emailed out to everyone on the board and everyone who has a registered email address. That was,
Yes.
that was a
That's
revised
what
agenda.
I'm sorry, I stole that from Williams.
Yeah.
And the only thing that was different, and it was explained when we sent it out the second time, the two items were the same, it's just there was further clarification as to what that meant.
okay, so that's where the confusion is with this
Okay.
three people right here. We have.
You're using the
But
originals.
I was
Okay.
able to follow John's logic. It's, it's not rocket science. Even
It's-
though
yeah.
I'm tired.
Special
and
language.
old.
So let's get on.
Okay, so we
All
need
right.
a motion.
So we got a motion, we need a
Okay.
second? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a second. Any other discussion?
Call the question.
Call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Opposed?
Okay. Motion passes.
I have a question for John. Mr. Rubenstein hit the fan when we changed the bylaws, and he wanted the people to change the bylaws.
Well, the people still can.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just that the legislature says that you can too.
Now, this, I have a question on that, this arch stuff.
Wait a minute, we're not gonna do the executive director thing.
Yeah, we need
Why
to,
don't we stay on
Yeah,
that
can
one?
I ask my question about the arch thing?
Okay.
When they do they're calling for 10%, they need a vote? Or is it a petition?
They're getting petitions
Okay.
signed by 10%
10%
to have
of
a
the-
meeting.
Of the
Now, at the same
registered
time, they're
voters.
soliciting proxies to be able to vote at the meeting.
Well, that's kind of odd, is it not?
Never been done before.
It's,
Well,
well, I don't know
it's
if
gotta-
anybody's done it before, but you're soliciting proxies for a meeting that hasn't yet been called.
Right.
But proxies under state law are valid for a period of up to 11 months.
Okay.
So if they don't get their petition signed to have a meeting within 11 months, then
Then-
the proxies would be
right.
invalid.
Now, if it is a special election,
A special meeting.
special meeting.
Maybe a
special
special
meeting, which would generate a special election.
Well, it's just a vote on these two
Right.
proxies.
To get
But
them
it's still-
on the
But it's
ballot?
still a vote, right?
No, you can vote.
Who pays for that?
The POA pays for that.
Thank you.
And-
That doesn't matter though. I
And
mean,
that
the same
meeting will
people
be
that,
convened by the board, by the president of the POA and conducted as any other special meeting.
it doesn't, that doesn't matter to certain individuals. We've already brought up the amount of legal fees we spend, and that does not matter.
Well,
It's
I
all
think
about
it should
proving our
matter.
point. I agree, 100% it matters.
So this arch thing,
but certain individuals, it doesn't matter to,
if it,
in my opinion.
if it
My-
pans out, will cost the POA money. That needs to go on the record somewhere.
Correct. If,
All right, thank
if,
you. That's all I just want to go on the record.
you would
And
have,
it could be, I don't know, elections cost money. Mail-outs cost money.
yeah, I mean, state law requires if you're going to have a special meeting with propositions to be voted on, every member gets a mail ballot,
Ballot.
just like we do
Yes,
before
just
the
like
board
for
elections.
right.
And has an opportunity to vote either.
And
in
then they
person
have to
or
pay
by
for
mail.
somebody to count the ballots, right?
And verify all the
Right.
signatures and the proxies.
Whole routine.
Technically, state law only, well, no, you want to have some, you'll need to have a separate person,
Right.
regulated count the votes,
Right.
yes.
And that costs, okay, just want to go in there. Thank you.
Can we move on?
As a counterpoint, the people are entitled to do that.
They are, absolutely.
In the words of the old lady in
Right on.
Christmas Vacation, I pledge allegiance to. Okay, we're up. Okay,
All right.
that's all I'm done.
Not they, we. I mean, I don't want to.
Yeah, I'm all-
I'm not speaking about the board, I'm speaking about everybody.
So Marvin,
We're homeowners first,
Excluded.
then we're.
So
I'm
Marvin,
a member as well as a board
It's-
member.
yes.
You know, is what I'm saying.
it's reasonably clear to me that you're a supporter of these two amendments. Reasonable.
I'm non-committal at this point.
Okay, but, okay, so just pretending that you were,
Why
Just-
are you questioning me?
because
We
I
have
wanna-
other things to do here.
because I wanna know what you think the actual changes in our bylaws and lives would be if they were to get on the, get voted in. What changes would they make? I'm trying to understand the logic behind all the energy spent on not being able to get rid of a director that can't and not.
This discussion is not on your agenda.
Yeah.
No,
it's-
I just don't get it. I don't understand the motivation. I
Okay,
don't get
so,
it.
Well, Mr. McFadden's out there if you'd like to discuss it.
I read all these letters. I still don't get it.
okay, so
Okay.
there was a
On to
second,
the second
there
part.
was a second part of what we were discussing. I need a motion if you guys want to vote And that is-
The word, director, coordinator.
I think we should change it all, fix it right.
Motion.
I make a motion that we redo the bylaws correctly and file that. You see this going on?
Carter,
Yes, sir.
to make it specific, read F.
on it, which
Okay.
doesn't match our F.
Right.
So I make a motion that amending subsection 202 of the bylaws to clarify that it applies to, quote, board officers rather than, quote, officers. And in section 3, changing the term executive coordinator to executive director, each place it appears.
Okay.
And I
So
get
we have a
that.
second. We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, any further discussion? I'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
I'll read this one.
Okay,
Just a second.
Marvin wants to read it for just a second. We'll count that as discussion.
Section 2.02 of the bylaws clarified.
I do.
Wants to be board officers rather than officer. Okay, so currently it just says officer?
Correct, that's what I pointed out to you last month, and there's a black line version in your board packet that shows exactly where 2.02 that changed. It literally reads,
Isn't there a difference between a board officer and an officer?
correct, in that she's not on the board. The executive coordinator, the executive director or executive coordinator specifically is not a board member.
So
And so
are you
therefore would not be
changing
a
it
board
board
officer.
officers or just officers? It's not clear what the change is.
No, that, it's very literal in what's being changed. And that it reads specifically, 2.02 says directors and officers shall be natural persons of the age of 18 or over and must be members of the association. That was the
Oh, I see.
problem pointed out.
Okay.
And so
So
we're
now you
saying
want-
board officers, so that would apply to the president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer, who all are board members that serve as officers.
Understood.
Okay. Any other discussion? Good? Good? You good? All right, I'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
So that means we can now get stuff right down in City Hall, right?
No.
The county court does.
Oh,
And
okay.
and our website.
And she's.
I don't know all that legal stuff.
Okay, so
Can we call him fearless leader?
just,
Now, that would require, Jack, that would require an amendment to the bylaws.
there is a discussion about, I'm not sure where it is or if it's in this discussion or in this package, but additional bylaw changes, which had to do with term limits.
Carter made a proposal a couple of meetings
Yep.
ago about term limits and stuff like
There
that.
were like 5 or 6 different things for the Policies and Procedures Committee that was supposed to, we're supposed to talk about and potentially vote on in December.
And you were gonna, draft some language about how we could implement the term limit thing? Or,
Well,
do we talk?
well, if you want to talk about term limits,
I wanna implement.
there are 100 different ways to write term limits.
So we were gonna get
You
a
just
draft.
have to tell me what it is that you want to make.
2 3-year terms. That's it.
2 3-year terms.
Oh, and then a 3-year
Okay,
term.
John, here's what I would propose.
Okay.
That in our December meeting, we have the,
Let's just listen up.
I'm sorry.
so in our December meeting, that we have the bylaw amendments that are being proposed, that you talked about 2 meetings ago. There were 5 or 6 of those, that we have those clearly stated. We have those routed around so everybody is comfortable with the wording or questions the wording or whatever it is, that we get those on the December agenda and we vote on them.
Good. And there, it's a draft of the meeting minutes to POA within, we changed the dates to, I said 3 days, but it was like 5 days, did we change?
Yeah, so
That the minutes get on the website after, did we agree to?
yes, we did,
Yeah.
we discussed.
Well, that could
the
be a
term.
policy or procedure, that doesn't have to be a
Okay.
bylaw amendment. You could do that as part of your
And
policy.
term limits is an amendment. Annual review and adoption of amendments to policy and procedure manual.
You could do that by policy. and
Okay,
procedure.
policy. Committee members or contractor vendors cannot be related to board members without complete and total prior disclosure. That's a policy.
We have that in our policy.
Any board member, staff member, committee member, or contractor vendor that threatens, or, we had a little trouble with this one, remember? That threatens or is involved in any way with a lawsuit immediately resigns. Board member, staff member, committee member, or contractor vendor that threatens or is involved in any way with a lawsuit toward the POA.
Well,
I mean, you said it's not enforceable.
Carter, for that, that's another illustration for your power to remove by unanimous vote. And if somebody's got minimal involvement in a lawsuit because they're a limited partner of something, then blah, 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 it's not a deal. But if they're actually in your face causing a lot of problems, the board can,
Okay.
I mean, I would trust the board's judgment to go through that without trying to write a hard, fast rule that if you're involved in any kind of lawsuit against the POA, you forfeit.
I'll drop that one. And then I had another policy, which is 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. The office.
But that's just a policy.
Right. So there's really only
so
one.
The only one is, and just to clarify on the term limits, you could be you could be elected for a maximum of 2 3-year terms.
And then have to
and
stay
you could
consecutive?
2 consecutive 3-year terms, and then you would have to stay out 3 years before you could be considered for either appointment or election.
Nobody will ever do that.
What? No, because this is one of the problems in writing this. I could say that you have to sit out for 3 years before being elected to another term, but that wouldn't keep the board then from appointing you.
What's satisfactory?
A year
What's
later.
satisfactory to this board? Let's simplify it and give John some
or-
direction.
Time out.
But no, I can make it to where there won't be a loophole in that regard.
3, 3, and 3.
It's 3, 3, and 3, but you really have to sit out a full 3 years, even though they might want to appoint you to fill a 1-year vacancy or a 2-year vacancy. You're out for 3 years, if that's the way you want it.
If this bylaw gets changed in December, how does that affect the upcoming election?
Not, it doesn't implement until.
But
Well, and you want, and you would,
I don't think
you would
it's-
not want it to go into effect until the terms starting, with this annual
March,
meeting would be
what,
term number
13th.
1.
Yeah, that'd be
That would be
good time
term
to start
number
it,
1.
yeah.
But you can't change the vote while the vote's going on anyway, so.
Well, we're not changing the vote, but for example.
Well, you're changing the concept of what you're voting in.
Well, let me get really specific.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I mean, you were elected
Well,
a year ago, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I see.
Can
I
you
know
serve,
Yeah, an
can you
extra
only serve
week.
one more term, or can you serve 2 more terms after the effective date of this bylaw? Marvin was elected a year ago.
Right.
Does this apply to you by counting your current term as term number 1, or does it not go into effect until the terms that start with this annual meeting coming up, in which case everybody present starts fresh.
Or, yeah, so you could say unless appointed to
right?
replace a previous
So-and-so.
board member
How does that
during
affect?
any, the prior 3-year term.
Well, no, appointments, I mean, well, you just told me that you wanted somebody to sit out 3 years, period. You don't want them either running for election
Yeah,
or
I don't
being
think
appointed
it's,
within 3
John, I
years.
don't think it's on the up and up if you could, would it have to be a unanimous vote to appoint somebody?
No, majority of you appoint
Majority.
somebody.
I don't think it's necessarily on the up and up for someone to be sitting out 3 years and be appointed.
No, that's not going to prohibit it. I mean, you have to sit out 3 years, period.
I think that's what we should go with.
But, so if someone gets appointed 2 years into a term, so they got
Well,
a year left.
that's where I was.
They got a year left, they should
Well,
be able
that
to serve
doesn't
that
count.
year and 2.
No,
Yeah,
no, that
doesn't count.
doesn't count as a 3-year term.
Right, that's what I'm saying, it shouldn't.
So that would.
So for example,
Because you're
okay,
penalizing.
under this rule, all present companies excluded, nothing starts until we start with the elections in 2018 is ground zero and go forward. If in 2019 somebody resigns who was elected in 2018,
Right.
and you appoint somebody to serve the remaining 2 years of that term, those 2 years don't count because they weren't elected to a 3-year term.
Can we say elected or
Well,
appointed?
and that's where you get into the whole deal of do you count years or do you count elected terms? And so, I mean, because Marvin, if somebody gets appointed 6 months before the end of the term, you hate for that to wipe them out for a whole 3-year deal. And as a practical matter, if they can only be elected, you know, if they're not eligible to be elected to a term, I've got this on a board right now, but I'm trying to explain it to him. They have staggered terms, and he was appointed, and this state law has an 8-year cap. And so you cannot be appointed to a term if that term would extend beyond the 8-year cap.
Yeah.
And so because he was appointed initially and only served 6 months of a term, it wiped him out of serving his 4th term because there's a, the state law says 8 years period, and you're not eligible for appointment to a term that would take you beyond that cap. So the problem is if I write it to where that earlier appointed term counts, then it's going to count whether it's 2.5 years or 6 months.
But you could have people serving 2 terms and someone serving 2.5 terms.
Well,
Because they were appointed to something, so the appointment would give them more years than genuinely elected people.
No question about it.
So that needs to be dealt with.
Well, they could serve up to 8 years, 364 days.
The problem in dealing with it is the solution winds up cutting that person out. They only serve 6 months. This happens to be a
Maybe you need to compromise it out of the 3-year block. If you do 2 years, that counts, as opposed to 6 months, some sort of timeline in there, cut off.
If it's more than half.
If it's more than half, something like that, is a compromise.
Can you fiddle around with that?
Let's give John some direction so he can get something drafted fairly quickly.
I don't necessarily think, and back right quick with, when should they start? I'm okay with 2 terms on
separate sentence. I'll have your sentence in there. It's going to be that if you were appointed to a term and served more than one half of the term, then that counts as an elected term.
I'd say 2 years.
You'll see how that goes. Or
I'd say more than 2 years then.
more than 2 years.
So that 2/3.
I
It's
can
a half
guarantee
year.
you, I can guarantee you from past experience, wherever I draw the line.
Yes.
There will be a board in the future that will leave a vacancy for an extra month to appoint the person so he or she doesn't get stung.
Right.
Because it's just human nature. Why burn somebody, if they don't, instead of getting burned. So we can draw the line wherever you want it to be. And
That's what I'm saying. If all this stuff keeps going on, you're not gonna have to worry about term limits. Nobody's gonna ever term out.
Yeah, but no, I've written term limits provisions since
Which is actually sad.
1984, and they're.
We'll see what you can do with that one. But just about this long. That big.
It's okay.
3 lines, max.
Okay. John, do you have what you need?
No big
Yes.
words, no big words.
Okay, I'll get some words on paper and you can tear it up from there.
All right, and it will be on the next.
But I just guarantee that whenever you write term limits, it's the natural state of physical entropy.
That's why we have humans and terms.
Tweak this, game the system. That's what my friend Mark's about.
Okay.
No.
So that will be on next month's agenda. All right. We're now going into executive session.
Do we need it?
Yes.
I gotta go, can I go? Can I do that now?
Absolutely. Hopefully, if you guys want to stick around, we've got a couple of issues that need to be taken care of. And some personnel, staff recommendations and things. Don't expect that there's going to be any votes that come out of it. Or we're going to vote in executive session, correct?
No, you vote out.
Or we're going to discuss and then go and come out.
Should we wait for Ms. Hess?
No.
No, I have exactly what he says once we say.
Can I clear this out?
Okay. All right. So we will reconvene and we'll take a vote.
Starry, starry night.